And we are off to the races. Here we are. We're streaming. We're happening. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious and beautiful day here in the land of, I don't know, Canada, in Commie Land, where we all live. Yeah, farewell, Kissinger. Farewell. Good to see you, Command Genius. Yeah, I feel like we've finally done it. We have the completion of the meme. The meme has finally reached its end point. No, you won't be missed, Kissinger. You won't be missed at all. Uh, uh, I'm looking forward to the inevitable Kissinger apologist that comes in here. It says you celebrating Kissinger's death is just as bad as the things Kissinger did. Really, really looking forward to it so that I can go click ban. Good to see you, that guy. Good to see you, that guy. So we're starting. Ooh, well, Command Genius with a boyfriend. Well, Command Genius. Well, that's nice. That's nice. What a good day for everybody. Today is a good day. I basically spent my day cleaning up my apartment. That's what I did today. I went through my apartment and I cleared it all out. I've been having just a nightmare difficult time with cockroaches. Been really, really struggling with cockroaches in my apartment. They started doing renovations in the basement of my building, and of course all the cockroaches that were obviously living in the basement went, oh, we got to go somewhere. And where are they coming? Into my apartment. That's where they're coming. And so I've been really struggling with that, but today I think it was finally the day where I was like, got it. It's finally, I can say, under control, to the degree that you can have these sorts of things under control, right? You know what's funny, Ligon to see, is like I'm with you on this. Ligon to see writes, I don't feel this W that much, right? I am kind of with you on this, Ligon to Z. Like, on the one hand, it's like, it's nice to know that we are going to like it's good to look forward to things. Like, we're all gonna see George W. Bush die, right? Yeah, great. We're all gonna be able to, like, we're gonna be living in a world without all of these ghouls in it, right? That there'll be a whole new rash of ghouls that we'll have to be dealing with. But those ghouls are gonna die, and it's kind of nice to know that the system is structured in such a way so that the worst people in it will eventually be chewed up. But at the same time, like, Kissinger lived to be 100, you know? Like, it's not like, it doesn't feel like there's a sense of justice, you know? It just feels like we're all kind of, like, trying to, like things have gotten so bad for us that we're just trying to find a W wherever we can find it, you know? What is good to know is that there are actually publications that are actually talking about Kissinger in this moment in a way that I would describe as accurate. Places like the New York Times, of course, are being as pathetic as they possibly can. But we have from the Rolling Stone, Henry Kissinger, war criminal beloved by America's ruling class, finally dies. The infamy of Nixon's foreign policy architect sits eternally beside that of history's worst mass murderers. A deeper shame attaches to the country that celebrates him. Henry Kissinger died on Wednesday at his home in Connecticut, his consulting firm said in a statement. The notorious war criminal was 100. Measuring purely by his confirmed kills, the worst mass murderer ever executed by the United States was white supremacist terrorist Timothy McVeigh. On April 19th, 1995, McVeigh detonated a massive bomb at the Murray Funeral Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people, including 19 children. The government killed McVeigh by lethal injection in June 2001. Whatever hesitation a state execution provokes, even over a man such as McVeigh, necessary questions about the legitimacy of killing even an unrepentant soldier of white supremacy. His death provided a measure of closure to the mother of one of his victims. It's a period at the end of a sentence, said Kathleen Traynor, whose 4-year-old McVeigh killed. McVeigh, who in his own psychotic way thought he was saving America, never remotely killed on the scale of Kissinger. the most revered American grand strategist of the second half of the 20th century. The Yale University historian Greg Grandin, author of the biography Kissinger's Shadow, estimates that Kissinger's action from 1996 through 1976, a period of 8 years when Kissinger made Richard Nixon's and then Gerald Ford's foreign policy as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, meant the end of between 3 and 4 million people. That includes crimes of commission, he explained, as in Cambodia and Chile, and omission, like greenlighting Indonesia's bloodshed in East Timor, Pakistan's bloodshed in Bangladesh, and the inauguration of an American tradition of using and then abandoning the Kurds. The Cubans say there is no evil that lasts 100 years, and Kissinger is making a run to prove them wrong, Grandin told Rolling Stone not long before Kissinger died. There is no doubt he'll be hailed as a geopolitical grand strategist, even though he bungled most crises, leading to escalation. He'll get credit for opening China, but that was de Gaulle's original idea and initiative. He'll be praised for détente, and that was a success, but he undermined his own legacy by aligning with the neocons. And of course, he'll get off scot-free from Watergate, even though his obsession with Daniel Ellsberg really drove the crime. No infamy will find Kissinger on a day like today. Instead, in a demonstration of why he was able to kill so many people and get away with it, the day of his passage will be a solemn one in Congress, and shamefully, says Kissinger has reporters like CBS Marvin Kalb and the New York Times Kendrick Smith wiretapped newsrooms. Kissinger, a refugee from the Nazis who became a pedigree member of the Eastern establishment Nixon hated, was a practitioner of American greatness, and so the press lionized him as the cold-blooded genius who restored America's prestige from the agony of Vietnam. Not once in the half-century that followed Kissinger's departure from power did the millions the United States killed matter for his reputation, except to confirm a ruthlessness that pundits occasionally find thrilling. America, like every empire, champions its state murderers. The only time I was ever in the same room as Henry Kissinger was a 2015 National Security Conference at West Point. He was surrounded by fawning Army officers and ex-officials basking in the presence of a statesman. Seymour Hersh, the investigative reporter who was the most prominent exception to the fawning coverage of Kissinger, watched journalistic deference take shape as soon as Kissinger entered the White House in 1969. His social comings and goings could make or break a Washington party, Hersh wrote in his biography, The Price of Power. Reporters like the Times' James Reston were eager participants in what Hersh called an implicit shakedown scheme, that is, access journalism, in which reporters who got inside information in turn protected Kissinger by not divulging either the full consequences of his acts or his own connection to them. Kissinger's approach to the press was his approach to Nixon, sniveling sniveling obsequiousness, although Kissinger could vent frustration on reporters that he never could hold on his boss. Hersh quotes H.R. Haldeman, Nixon's chief of staff, remarking that Kissinger was the hawk of hawks inside the White House, but touching glasses at a party with his liberal friends, the belligerent Kissinger would suddenly become a dove. Reviewing one of Kissinger's litany of books, Hillary Clinton in 2014 said Kissinger, a friend, whose counsel she relied on as Secretary of State, possessed a conviction that we and President Obama share, a belief in the indispensability of continued American leadership in service of a just and liberal order. Kissinger told USA Today within days that Clinton, presumed then to be the president in waiting, ran the State Department in the most effective way that I had ever seen. The same story noticed a photograph autographed by Obama thanking Kissinger for his continued leadership. It's always valuable to hear the reverent tones with which American elites speak of their monsters. When the Kissingers of the world pass, their humanity, their purpose, their sacrifices are foremost in the minds of the respectable. American elites recoiled in disgust when Iranians in great numbers took to the streets to honor one of their monsters, Qasem Soleimani, after a U.S. drone strike executed the Iranian external security chief in January 2020. Soleimani, whom the United States declared to be a terrorist and killed as such, killed far more people than Timothy McVeigh. But even if we attribute to him all the deaths in the Syrian civil war, never in Soleimani's wildest dreams could he kill as many people as Henry Kissinger. Nor did Soleimani get to date Jill St. John, who played Bond girl Tiffany Case in Diamonds Are Forever. Kissinger's ascent occurred through an obscenity that time cannot diminish. In 1968, Lyndon Johnson agreed to peace negotiations with the North Vietnamese, in tacit recognition of the nightmare he, building on the works of his two immediate predecessors, brought to life in Vietnam. Kissinger, an influential Cold War defense intellectual at Harvard, had access to members of the diplomatic delegation to the Paris talks. He used it to feed information from the negotiations to Richard Nixon's presidential campaign, a campaign whose defeated GOP rival, Nelson Rockefeller, Kissinger advised. And despite Kissinger's closest political ties to the coterie around Hubert Humphreys, Nixon's Democratic rival, Nixon ran for president, claiming to have a secret plan to end the war. His advisors told Hirsch that they were deeply afraid that Johnson and Hanoi would reach an accord before the election. It would save lives in Vietnam, American and Vietnamese, but it would undermine Nixon's hope of exploiting the explosion in domestic anti-war sentiment. Nixon gratefully took what Kissinger gave him to make the U.S. proxy regime in Saigon, whose regime peace would destabilize, more intransigent. No agreement was reached until 1973, and the war ended in American humiliation with Hanoi's 1975 victory. It took some balls to give us those tips, Richard Allen, a foreign policy researcher on the Nixon campaign, later reflected to Hirsch. After all, it was a pretty dangerous thing for Kissinger to be screwing around with the national security. Every single person who died in Vietnam between autumn 1968 and the fall of Saigon, and all who died in Laos and Cambodia, where Nixon and Kissinger secretly expanded the war within months of taking office, as well as all who died in the aftermath, like the Cambodian genocide their destabilization set into motion, died because of Henry Kissinger. We will never know what might have been. The question Kissinger's apologists and those in the U.S. foreign policy elite who imagine themselves standing in Kissinger's shoes insist upon when explaining away his crimes. We can only know what actually happened. What actually happened was that Kissinger materially sabotaged the only chance for an end to the war in 1968 as a hedged bet to ensure he would achieve power in Nixon's administration or Humphrey's. A true tally will probably never be known of everyone who died, so Kissinger could be national security advisor. Once in the White House, Nixon and Kissinger found themselves without leverage to produce a peace accord with Hanoi. In the hopes of manufacturing one, they came up with the madman theory, the idea that North Vietnam would negotiate peace after they came to believe Nixon was adventurous and bloodthirsty enough to risk anything. In February 1969, weeks after taking office and lasting through April 1970, U.S. warplanes secretly dropped 110,000 tons of bombs on Cambodia. By the summer of 1969, according to a colonel on the Joint Staff, Kissinger, who had no constitutional role in the military chain of command, was personally selecting bombing targets. Not only was Henry carefully screening the raids, he was reading the raw intelligence, Colonel Ray B. Sitton told Hirsch for the price of power. A second phase of bombing continued until August 1973, 5 months after the final U.S. combat troops withdrew from Vietnam. By then, U.S. bombs had killed an estimated 100,000 people out of a population of only 7 million. The final phase of the bombing, which occurred after the Paris Peace Accords mandated U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam, was its most intense, an act of cruel vengeance from a thwarted superpower. Cambodia, like Laos before it, was a formerly neutral country, meaning that bombing it was an illegal aggression under the United Nations Charter. But beyond the control of Prince Sihanouk, the North Vietnamese used Cambodian territory for the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a weapons pipeline not unlike the one America is currently operating for Ukraine. In April 1970, following a coup by American client Colonel Lon Nol that overthrew Sihanouk, Nixon ordered U.S. troops in Vietnam to invade Cambodia outright. In the air or on the ground, they were unable to destroy the trail, only human beings. Those who survived reacted. Sometimes the bombs fell and hit the little children, and their fathers would be all for the Khmer Rouge, a former Khmer Rouge cadre told historian Ben Kernan, founder of Yale University's Genocide Studies program. Nixon and Kissinger's failure in Cambodia prompted in 1971 the U.S. South Vietnamese invasion of Laos, another failure. Kissinger later blamed defeat on U.S. clients rather than, say, people like himself. In retrospect, I have come to doubt whether the South Vietnamese ever really understood what we were trying to accomplish, Kissinger wrote in his memoirs. At the time, the secret bombing of Cambodia was a startling offense that prompted substantial political backlash when it became public. One of the articles of impeachment against Nixon prepared by the House Judiciary Committee in 1974 held that bombing Cambodia was a constitutional usurpation of Congress's war powers. But on July 30th, the committee ended up rejecting the article, 26 votes to 12, and it never became part of the coalescing impeachment effort that stopped with Nixon's resignation. 40 years later, and likely as a consequence, U.S. presidents routinely bomb countries the U.S. is not at war with. They provide the barest minimum of disclosure that the bombs have fallen, and often not even that. When the U.S. declared wars fail, as they did in Iraq and Afghanistan, their architects and stewards blame the U.S. militaries and governments they prop up. They cover their troop withdrawals with fertile bombing campaigns that kill people so American statesmen can save face. Whether he realized it or not, when President Biden in July 2021 blamed the Afghans for losing the Afghanistan war, the Afghan military collapsed, sometimes without trying to fight, was a typical line. He was reaching for Nixon and Kissinger's template. One second, guys. I got a little dog right here that's just basically scratching at me for like a little blanket. 1 second. Milo, you're interrupting our celebration of Kissinger's death. 1 second, guys. Okay, Milo, my man. This is what you're after? I know this is what you're after, my man. I know, you're old and little. You want a little blanket. Here you go, buddy. Here you go. Resist colonizers coming in with, yeah, fuck this guy. I think you said you'd hope Kissinger would join Charlie Munger soon yesterday, a few minutes before it was announced he was dead. Oh my goodness, you're right, June. I've got superpowers. Yeah, get the F out of here. Yeah, George Soros. There would be a good one. Soros. Let's go. We pick the target. Are we picking targets? Do we have the Death Note? Do we have the Death Note ability? That's what I should get, a Death Note. Right? Write their names in. The only problem with the Death Note is that it says explicitly in the Death Note that if you use it, you can never go to heaven or hell. So much for that idea. Kissinger played a role in the deaths of so many different peoples that treating each with due consideration requires writing a book. Here is one example among many of the sort of carnage Kissinger inflicted indirectly rather than by edict. In 1971, the Pakistani government waged a campaign of genocide to suppress the independence movement in what would become Bangladesh. Pakistan's Yahya Khan, an architect of the genocide, was valuable to Nixon's ambition of restoring diplomatic relations with China. So the U.S. let Khan's forces rape and murder at least 300,000 people, and perhaps 3 million. We can't allow a friend of ours and China's to get screwed in a conflict with a friend of India's. Nixon quoted Kissinger, shrugging. That perspective typified Kissinger. The Cold War was a geopolitical balance among two great powers. The purpose of Cold War statecraft was to maximize American freedom of action to inflict Washington's will on the world. A zero-sum contest that meant restricting the ability of the Soviet Union to inflict Moscow's without the destabilization or outright Armageddon that would result from pursuing a final defeat of the Soviets. That last part explains much right-wing hostility towards Kissinger. Kissinger represented anti-communism without ideological zeal. He was an energetic, even relentless practitioner of the Cold War, the theater of anti-communist conflict. But like George Kennan before him, Kissinger thought viewing the Cold War in ideological terms missed the point. The point was American geopolitical dominance, something measured in impunity and achieved by any means necessary. That permitted Nixon and Kissinger the creativity to reopen China, something Nixon would have demagogued anyone else for attempting. Reopening China was by far the greatest achievement of Nixon's foreign policy. It was the rare geopolitical initiative where Kissinger was a mere facilitator. Cy Hirsch, in The Price of Power, calls Nixon the grand theatrician, a rapprochement with Beijing, with Nixon's... I gotta zoom this stuff in, guys. My eyesight. Getting old. Cy Hirsch in The Price of Power calls Nixon the grand theatrician of rapprochement with Beijing, with Nixon's occasional operative. Kissinger's dramatic, secret July 1921 trip to Beijing in advance of Nixon's visit probably renders that description parsimonious. This guy's just like using all the thesaurus words. I just gotta say it. The guy's pulling out the thesaurus and being like, I don't talk in plain English. Parsimonious. But, writes Hirsch, there is no evidence that Kissinger seriously considered the question of an an American-Chinese rapprochement before his appointment as Nixon's national security advisor. Once it happened, Kissinger became an overnight celebrity, the sort of person destined to be shrouded in myth and apology. Kissinger might not have been motivated by hatred of communism, but he was a reactionary who empowered and enabled the sort of reactionaries for whom anti-communism was a respectable channel for America's racist and exploitive socioeconomic traditions. His chief aide on the National Security Council was a rabid anti-communist militarist, Army Colonel Alexander Haig, a future Secretary of State for Ronald Reagan. When Kissinger came under attack from neoconservatives and others on the right who couldn't tolerate détente with the Soviets and rapprochement with the Chinese, neither he nor they recognized that both of them were driven by the Cold War forces that Kissinger stoked when convenient. Most important of all the reactionaries was Nixon, without whom Kissinger would have lacked power, and from whom Kissinger could withstand any indignity. Nixon was one of the original Cold War demagogues, the men who never hesitated to identify communism with black people and the Eastern establishment liberals who postured as allies. His escalation in Vietnam, along with the secret bombing in Cambodia he revealed in a televised address, prompted a resurgence of the anti-war movement. Nixon exploited the mass protests by contrasting them with the silent majority of loyal Americans. Instead of ending the war, he had campaigned on doing and silencing or co-opting the anti-war movement in the process, Nixon inflamed a culture war to distract from it. It was an echo of his infamous Southern strategy to harness for the Republican Party the electoral benefits of white backlash to the civil rights movement. Nixon was not subtle about who he meant by the Eastern establishment. When the media seized upon the U.S. massacre of My Lai, Nixon remarked, "It's those dirty, rotten Jews from New York who are behind it." Nixon's White House counsel, John Ehrlichman, recalled Nixon talking about Jewish traitors in front of Kissinger, including Jews at Harvard. Kissinger would assure the boss he was one of the good ones. "Well, Mr. President," Ehrlichman quoted him responding, "there are Jews and Jews." Kissinger maintained his standing in part by savaging the Eastern establishment from which he emerged. It was not entirely cynical. Kissinger shared with Nixon a contempt for the defeatism and pessimism of those who flinched at the unsavory Vietnam War they once supported. He rationalized his purges of the National Security Council bureaucracy and his marginalization of the State Department, measures that made him indispensable to foreign policy and to Nixon, as protecting American power from those who lacked the confidence to wield it. It is revealing that among those who make U.S. foreign policy, Kissinger's perspective is not considered ideological. Kissinger's consolidation of bureaucratic control was punitive and paranoid. He used the fear of internal leaks to get the FBI to wiretap his staff and the journalists he suspected of receiving their information. Yet the Eastern establishmentarians around Kissinger, on his staff or in the press, followed him like a puppy, seeking an ear scratch. His cold-blooded American exceptionalism was the perfect tone for speaking to a shaken ruling class. Anthony Lake, who would go on to become National Security Advisor to Bill Clinton, finally quit in May 1970, alongside his colleague Roger Morris. Their breaking points were the Vietnam escalation, Nixon's alcoholism, and the surreptitious White House wiretaps that Nixon also pursued to enforce loyalty. But Lake and Morris opted not to go public. "I consider the failure to do so to be the biggest failure of my life," Morris told Hirsch for the Price of Power. "We didn't do so on the single calculation that it would destroy Henry." Weeks later, Kissinger, via Haig, had the FBI wiretap Lake. In Southeast Asia, Kissinger destroyed, but in Chile, he helped build a template for the world in which we currently live. On September 4th, 1970, Chileans elected the democratic socialist Salvador Allende president. Allende's program was more than redistributionist. It demanded reparation from the U.S. for exploiting it. Chile is rich in copper, and by the mid-1960s, 80% of its copper production was controlled by American corporations, particularly the firms Anaconda Copper and Kennecott. When Allende nationalized mining assets held by two companies, Allende informed them he would deduct estimated excess profit from a compensatory package he was willing to pay the firms. It was this sort of unacceptable policy that prompted Kissinger to remark, during an intelligence meeting about 2 months before Allende's election, "I don't see why we need to stand idly by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its own people." Kissinger meant that there must never be an example of a country in America's sphere of influence deriving socialism through the ballot. Henry saw Allende as being far more serious threat than Castro. Kissinger's staffer Morris told Hirsch, "Allende was a living example of democratic social reform in Latin America." Kissinger and the CIA had decided to overthrow Allende just days after Allende's election. Upon learning that was in motion, the U.S. ambassador in Santiago, Edward Corey, who was second to none in opposing Allende, cabled Kissinger that to actively encourage a coup could lead us to a Bay of Pigs failure. An apocalyptic Kissinger told Corey to stay out of the way. according to Tim Weiner's Legacy of Ashes, The History of the CIA. When the CIA failed at what Corey termed a Rube Goldberg gambit to get the Chilean Congress to stop Allende from taking office, that's right, the CIA tried a January 6th in Chile. Haig urged his boss to purge the key left-wing dominant slots in the agency. Corey was wrong in the end. Kissinger's policy of overthrowing Allende, why not support extremists, he spitballed in a December 1970 White House meeting with the CIA's covert operations chief, Tom Karamessinis, paid off on September 11th, 1973, when a military junta took power, prompting Allende's suicide. He would be among the first of 3,200 Chileans to die violently under the 17-year regime of Augusto Pinochet and his Caravana de la Muerto, to say nothing of the tens of thousands tortured and imprisoned. In the Eisenhower period, he would be heroes, Kissinger told Nixon in a telephone conversation days after the coup. The same week, he denied at his Senate confirmation hearings that the U.S. played any role in it. The coup was only the beginning. Within 2 years, Pinochet's regime invited Milton Friedman, Arnold Harberger, and other economists from the University of Chicago to advise them. Chile pioneered the implementation of their agenda: severe government budgetary austerity, relentless assaults on organized labor, privatization of state assets, including health care and public pensions, layoffs of government employees, abolition of wages and price controls, and deregulation of capital markets. Multinationals were not only granted the right to repatriate 100% of their profits, but given guaranteed exchange rates to help them do so, Grandin writes in his book Empire's Workshop. European and American bankers flocked to Chile before its 1982 economic collapse. The World Bank and Inter-American Development Bank loaned Pinochet $3.1 billion between 1976 and 1986. As Corey Robin has documented, Friedrich von Hayek's neoliberal Montpellier Society held a 1981 meeting in the very city where the junta plotted the replacement of democratic socialism with a harbinger of today's global economic order. Pinochet's torture chambers were the maternity ward of neoliberalism, a baby delivered bloody and screaming by Henry Kissinger. This was the just and liberal world order Hillary Clinton considered Kissinger's life's work. He was no less foundational in pushing the frontiers of where American military power could operate. It turned out the secret bombing of Cambodia and Laos, which lasted years, represented a template. When Nixon, in 1970, revealed the secret bombings, it was a step too far even for Thomas Schelling, one of the Pentagon's favorite defense academics, who called them sickening. As Grandin writes in Kissinger's Shadow, the Cambridge to Washington set was not prepared in 1970 to accept that the U.S. had the right to destroy an enemy safe haven in a country it was not at war with, and to do it all in secret, thereby shielding a war from basic public scrutiny. After 9/11, those assertions became accepted. Foundational pillars, a war on terror permitting 4 presidents to bomb for 20 years Pakistanis, Yemenis, Somalis, Libyans, Syrians, and others. Kissinger met with Pinochet and Santiago in June 1976. It was a time of rising U.S. congressional anger at Pinochet's reign of terror. Kissinger informed the general that he was obliged to make an anodyne criticism of Pinochet to forestall adverse legislation. My evaluation is that you are a victim of all left-wing groups around the world, Kissinger said, according to a declassified cable, and that your greatest sin was that you overthrew a government which was going communist. 3 months later, U.S. diplomats warned Kissinger about Operation Condor, an international campaign of right-wing assassinations pursued by the anti-communist regimes of Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. Kissinger has instructed that no further action can be taken on this matter, according to a September 16, 1976 cable. 5 days later, a car bomb emplaced by Pinochet's agents detonated along with Washington, D.C.'s Embassy Row, killing Orlando Letelier, Allende's foreign minister, and his American co-worker, Ronnie Moffat. In 1999, Pinochet was arrested in London through an effort by Balthazar Garzon, a Spanish judge investigating Operation Condor. Kissinger urged the British not to extradite the general. "I would be very happy if Pinochet was allowed home," he told an interviewer. "This episode has gone on long enough, and all my sympathies are with him." 2 years later, the administration of George W. Bush responded contemptuously to the Chilean Supreme Court's effort to compel Kissinger to testify. "It is unjust and ridiculous that a distinguished servant of this country should be harassed by foreign courts in this way," an official told the Daily Telegraph. The paper noted that Kissinger was an informal advisor to Bush, as he was to many presidents. Bush's declaration of protection for Kissinger, coupled with his rejection of the Rome Treaty on the International Criminal Court, extinguished a glimmer of hope that Kissinger would someday join Pinochet under arrest. It was always a fantasy. The international architecture that the U.S. and its allies established after World War II, shorthanded today as the rules-based international order, somehow never gets around to applying the same pressure on a hegemonic United States as it applies to U.S. hostile or defiant powers. It reflects the organizing principles of American exceptionalism. American acts, it is not acted upon. Henry Kissinger was a supreme architect of the rules-based international order. In that regard, Kissinger was singular, but by no means unique. Kissinger built upon foundations constructed by Henry Morgenthau, Dean Ashton, George Kennan, Paul Nitze, and Dulles brothers, the Bundy brothers, JFK. You could go back to Albert Thayer Mahan and Teddy Roosevelt if you wanted, or James Monroe, or depending on how fundamental you think empire is to America, 1619. He and Nixon chose to escalate in Vietnam and pursue the destruction of Cambodia, but the Pentagon Papers showed that the Vietnam War was the result of compounding decisions made in the Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson administrations. The Vietnamese guerrilla and Justice Minister Truong Nhu Tang writes in his Viet Cong memoir that Kissinger, whose intellect he praises, inherited a conceptual framework from his American and French predecessors that led him to disaster. Kissinger and Nixon turned that into Watergate, as Grandin pointed out earlier in this story. Watergate began with a demand for vengeance on Daniel Ellsberg, the anti-Kissinger, for leaking the Pentagon Papers. Watergate was a grim demonstration, for neither the first nor the last time, that the crimes America commits abroad have a dialectical relationship with the crimes that America commits at home. Infamy has many fathers, as victory. That, ultimately, is why Kissinger died a celebrity, with the wealth necessary to get taken in by Theranos. It is why Roger Morris and Anthony Lake opted against telling the country that the commander-in-chief was an alcoholic who was secretly surveilling his real and imagined critics. Whatever Kissinger's origins, whatever rants about Jew boys he had to endure, Kissinger was an exemplar of the self-confident geopolitical potency that America's elites, whatever they might personally think of Henry Kissinger, want America to make the world respect. When the Roger Morrises and Anthony Lakes and Hillary Clintons see Henry Kissinger, they see, despite what they will rotely and euphemistically acknowledge as his flaws, themselves as they wish to be. Kissinger lived for over a half-century in the world he had made. He was its hubris. He could see that the Iraq War would be a disaster, but he went along with it anyway, declaring, "The case for removing Iraq's capacity of mass destruction is extremely strong." Kissinger's calculation, expressed in the noblest possible way, is that acceptance of an impending disaster is the price of influencing and hence mitigating it. His accommodation to the inevitability of political decisions he thought were folly harkened back to his 1968 embrace of Nixon. What were the lives of Vietnamese, Cambodians, or Iraqis compared to Kissinger's opportunity to help shape history. Bum. Basically nailing it on the head, right? This guy's a psycho. There you go. I'm glad he's dead. It's really great that Henry Kissinger died. I'm happy that he died. The world is better off without him. I look forward to celebrating the death of Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney will be a good one. It'll be nice to see people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. It'll be nice to see all of them go too, right? Allende. Good to see you guys. Thanks for helping with the pronunciation. Morgenthau understood that the Teuton barbarians had brought the world nothing but 2 world wars and the Holocaust and couldn't be trusted and had to be put on a leash. Yeah, how'd that work out? Yeah, there's always new ones that take their place. That's right. So we got to keep a sharp eye out. Speaking of the monsters amongst us, CUF Canada, which runs the Ontario government-backed Holodomor Nazi propaganda bus tour, announced alongside mandatory education on the Holodomor for grade 10 students, just provided $300,000 to a Nazi army's medical section. Huh? Isn't that nice? Organization running Ontario government-backed Nazi propaganda bus tour aided Ukrainian Nazis army medical section. Yay! We are literally allowing Nazi propaganda and Nazi propagandists to influence our government. Isn't that great? Here in Ontario? Isn't that great what we're doing? We're the smartest people. We're the smartest people ever. We're literally experiencing this enormous time of rising fascism, and our education minister is outright taking money from people who fund neo-Nazi groups and putting Nazi propaganda into our curriculum to teach our children neo-Nazi propaganda. Isn't that fun? Isn't that really great? Isn't it great that there's going to be this whole generation of Ontarians who are going to basically be brainwashed into believing Nazi propaganda is real? Wow. Good stuff. There's certainly not going to be any blowback from that whatsoever. Certainly not going to be any big explosion, right? From teaching kids that Nazi propaganda is true. What a cartoon society we are. Yeah, because we didn't have enough people believing the Nazi propaganda. Exactly. No, you got to get them when they're young and they're vulnerable, right? You got to get them when they're young and they're vulnerable. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of my aunt who tried to argue with me the Nazis weren't that bad. Also, can you comment on the rant at the beginning of the stream? Oh, you popped in and did a thing? Debate with your boomer aunt. The boomer aunt saga continues. Boomer aunt. She accused me that not only do I have a glass half full, but there's a hole in it. Why did she say that? Because I reject the entire idea that Bill Gates is a self-made billionaire. But so does Bill Gates. That's the thing. Bill Gates himself says that he owes his mother his wealth. Right? That's a direct quote from Bill Gates. I have my mom to thank. I don't know what you want. If you're not going to accept quotes from the man himself, then I don't know what you need. It's just people just want to believe it. They just are in a religious mindset about this stuff, where it's just, no, he has a lot of money. He that makes him a good man. And he uses the free market. That's what did it. He just manipulated the free market the best. He wasn't born into a well-connected family who leveraged their positions of connection in order to benefit their own child, right? It's not nepotism. It can't possibly be nepotism. Can't possibly be the case that the people who ascend the hierarchy are not the most competent, but rather the best positioned. Like, it's just kind of getting embarrassing, honestly. How the will of the parasites are done through the government and they never respond to the will of the people because of the lobby group. Yeah, I mean, of course she thinks it's crazy talk. She probably thinks that, like, the mainstream media is God or something. Like, it's ridiculous. Hey, John, check the Discord when you can. Canada is now officially criminalizing criticism of a private individual's support. Where did you put it, my friend? Is it this? Where'd you put it, that guy? I'd like to see that. Where did you put that? Like, is it in the general? Articles. Where? Like, is it just this? Like, is it just this? Is it just this, bud? Because I'm definitely going to read about this. Like, this whole thing has kicked up a huge. We have the Jews Say No Genocide press conference at Indigo, right? What this is in reference to, of course, is that there have been Palestine solidarity activists who have been rounded up here in Toronto. This is not being ignored. There are people who are picking this story up. Naomi Klein to Heather Reisman. Charges must be dropped against Indigo 11. Yeah. New charges added for Peace 11. November 30th, 2023. Hours after hundreds of Jewish people gathered outside the flagship Indigo bookstore in Toronto, holding up replica posters that exposed Indigo CEO Heather Reisman's direct financial support for genocide in Palestine by funding the participation of foreign soldiers in the Israeli army. A new criminal harassment charge has been added to existing conspiracy and mischief charges against 11 peace activists in Toronto. Heather Reisman, one of the richest people in Canada, would have to claim that she fears for her life and or safety for these charges to be laid. All because of alleged posters and red paint outside a store window, a tactic used by over half a century by anti-war movements in Canada. In doing so, Heather Reisman, with the support of Toronto police, has attacked the most basic charter-protected right of free speech. The police and the prosecution can't really believe that these charges will lead to convictions, because doing so would fundamentally alter the ability of all civil society and social movements to speak freely. We recognize that the real purpose of these charges is to silence and create a chilling effect on Palestine liberation movements. But 3/4 of the people in Canada support a ceasefire in Gaza. Our movement cannot and will not be intimidated, not when over 15,000 people have been murdered in Gaza, babies buried under rubble, 1.5 million displaced. The only path ahead is forward. We will continue to show up in the hundreds of thousands, to go into the streets, to call for a permanent ceasefire, an end to the siege of Gaza, and an end to Canadian complicity in Israeli occupation. Yeah, people like Heather Reisman, they can do this because they've got infinite money, right? They've just got so much money, right? Yeah. Watson, Heather Reisman banned Mein Kampf from Indigo chapters 15 years ago, but promotes the Zionist version of Nazism. Yeah. And I suspect the reason why she bans Mein Kampf is because she doesn't want anybody to read it. Whoops. What the heck just happened? Oh, what the heck just happened there? What the heck just am I still streaming even? That was weird what just happened. That was really weird what just happened. Like, all my tabs and everything just closed out. That was really strange. Am I still streaming for you guys? Yeah, still streaming. Weird. That was really weird what just happened there. I am going to blame the CIA as always. Always blame. Whenever anything weird happens, guys, go ahead and just blame the CIA. Yeah, restore all tabs. We're back. We're back. Of course, it's all going to take its time to load everything up. Yeah, Heather Reisman got a hold of your computer. I blame the lizard people, for sure. My position is, and will always remain, we need to get rid of the wealthy. That someone like Heather Reisman is allowed to do this and can do this because she just has wealth that she can just spend on it, right? She literally can just drop money that she's not going to miss in order to do this kind of thing, right? And the actual resolution, how you actually resolve these sorts of problems and these issues in the society is you just make sure a person doesn't have so much wealth that they can just drop it on this kind of frivolous bullshit. Right? And that's exactly what this is. It's frivolous bullshit. It's so obvious that she's using her money to go after these people. It's so obvious that that's the case. You'd have to be a total dullard to think otherwise. And of course, the issue is that she's not, like, there's no punishment for her. Not really. For doing this, even if it goes to court, even if it goes to the Supreme Court, even if all the charges are dropped, and even if all, so what? It doesn't matter to her at all. She's not even going to be involved in it. She's not the one that's going to go to court. It's going to be some lawyer that she bought, right? That's going to go to court and do all this stuff for her. So it's literally just taking money and harassing people. It's lawful evil behavior is what it is. So this is why I agree with Linda McQuaig. Time to hit the rich with a wealth tax. I bet that she's going to be really nice to them, right? Because I think it should be 100% over $1 million. Robin Hood never managed to make much of a dent in income inequality. But if he's still out there, he switched sides and is now unabashedly working for the Sheriff of Nottingham. After years of the rich getting richer, they're now getting spectacularly richer, while most Canadians are losing ground. This might explain the rising anger in the country. Canadians are enraged, according to the Polaripol's Rage Index, and a significant factor is their precarious personal finances. This is commonly referred to as the affordability crisis, but another way to say it is that ordinary people don't have enough money. Understandably, people feel enraged when they can't afford food and shelter for themselves and their children, especially when they're working full-time, often at several jobs. They know they're getting the short end of the stick. But unless they read Statistics Canada's releases, they're probably unaware just how long the other end of the stick has suddenly become. Of course, it's conventional wisdom that the rich always get richer. In fact, this isn't true. From the 1930s to the 1980s, there was a significant redistribution from the rich to the rest of society. However, since the early 1980s, that is for the past 4 decades, the rich have managed to rewrite the laws governing the economy, making themselves even richer. But even by the standard of the last 4 decades, the incomes of the rich have recently spiked upwards to a shocking degree. Just released Statistics Canada data shows that in 2021, the top 1% of Canadians saw their incomes grow by fully 20%. Farther up, the incomes of the top 0.01% grew by a stunning 30% to an average yearly income of $12.5 million. This prompted Statistics Canada, not known for rabble-rousing, to note that in inflation-adjusted dollars, this is much higher than at any point in the past 40 years. Meanwhile, that same year, the bottom half of Canadians, some 14 million working people, saw their incomes actually drop. Politicians have responded mostly with empty claims that they care about the plight of working people. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is trying to ride a wave of rage over affordability all the way to becoming prime minister, hoping to convince working people he's on their side by occasionally wearing work boots. Certainly, he's dead against raising taxes on the rich, but this, along with strengthening labor rights, is the starting point for any serious attempt to help working Canadians, because it would enable governments to strengthen and expand social benefits and supports that would make workers' lives more affordable. The Trudeau Liberals, unlike Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, always make it sound like they're keen to tax the rich. Hence, in their budget last March, the Liberals proclaimed they were ensuring the wealthiest Canadians pay their fair share, as they brought in income tax changes that will raise another $525 million a year from high-income earners. But these changes will have little impact on the wealthiest Canadians, who are largely able to avoid income taxes. To tax the truly wealthy, and only them, a wealth tax is far more effective. A wealth tax would apply exclusively to those with net assets of more than $10 million, just 87,000 families. Under one model, they'd pay 1% a year on assets above $10 million, 2% above $50 million, and 3% above $100 million. Yet the tax could raise an estimated $32 billion, about 60 times more than the liberal income tax charges. Like, look how pathetic this is. Literally a 1% over 10 million. Fuck you. 100% over a million. Fuck off. Despite almost no public debate about it, a wealth tax has the support of close to 90% of Canadians. Yet the wealthy have managed to keep it off the agenda. Their phalanx of lawyers, accountants, and economists are quick to dismiss all attempts to raise taxes on the rich, and a wealth tax, given the way it can be so effectively targeted, is considered particularly odious. As for the rest of us, rather than silently stewing in rage, we should be sensibly demanding a wealth tax. Yeah, this is so pathetic, though. 1% on assets over $10 million. How about 100% on assets over $1 million? How about that? Just fuck you. You have $1 million? Good, you're done. Everything else 100%. And if you think that's too much, too bad. Cry about it. Go write a memoir. Go write something about it in the National Post. Go jerk off Conrad Black or something. Get them fucking out of here. Like, brutal. Like, it's annoying that, like, the people who are actually, like, being published in the Toronto Star, right? People who are actually being published in, like, the Toronto Star and actually being listened to, who would be considered on the left, are asking for pathetic bullshit that has, like, no impact and does nothing of merit whatsoever. How about 100% tax on all everything? You make $1 million, great. Everything else goes away, and we don't give a fuck. Move somewhere else. Fuck off. Go die. We don't give a shit. Go die like Kissinger. Do us the favor. Fuck off. It's brutal. Just brutal. But that's probably the only reason she gets published, Watson. Like, that's the truth. Yeah, still banging the dead-end reformist sock dem dream, right? But that's probably the only reason she's getting published. Because if somebody were to stand up, and it wouldn't matter how many followers they had, and it wouldn't matter how many books they published, it wouldn't matter what they said. If they actually stood up and said what I just said, they just wouldn't be published, right? That the only thing the system of power is willing to tolerate whatsoever is just the smallest, most pathetic, itsy-bitsy, teensy little idea of reformism at all. That if you actually stood up and said, yeah, we should kill the cancer, right? We should actually get rid of the parasite. We should actually be done with the parasite and be done with the cancer. Then you just wouldn't be published, right? You just wouldn't be in the conversation. That's the method of control that exists. What do I think of Vitesse? I have no idea what you're talking about. Straight up, June. I don't know what you're talking about. Just no idea what you're talking about. And is any small wonder, right? I've been sort of holding off on this one because this is going to be brutal. Like, this is going to be a brutal one to read. I've been holding off on this article because it's like it's really tough to believe that there are still people who pretend as though that this is not a genocide. What's going on in Israel is not a genocide. That's the thing that kills me. But I mean, nothing really surprises me anymore, right? Yeah, it's only leftist extremism they care about. They love right-wing extremism, though, like Kissinger. Yeah, kill 3 million people through indiscriminate bombing. Cool and normal, right? Feed and shelter your populace. No, you can't do that. Whoa. Hold on. What are we, extremists? Holy cow. That's wild. The vast scale of Gaza genocide comes into view. 3 days into the first let-up in Israel's 2-month-long bombardment and invasion of Gaza, film crews have begun to document the evidence of the deliberate mass murder of Gaza's civilian population in what is the world's largest crime scene. Last week, Politico reported that the White House was concerned that a pause in Israel's attack against Gaza would allow journalists broader access to Gaza and the opportunity to further illuminate the devastation there and turn public opinion on Israel. And so they have. An on-the-ground report by Al Jazeera over the weekend described the scene at Gaza's Indonesian hospital. The stench of death forces people to cover their nose. Charred, decomposing bodies, children among them, are piled up in one corner. No burials have taken place because Israeli snipers targeted anyone who ventured out to dig a grave. Streets, schools, houses, shops, Israeli strikes have destroyed them all. These reports have completely exposed U.S. President Joe Biden's lie that Palestinian health authorities were overstating the death toll in Gaza. In fact, the Biden administration now admits the official death toll is a significant underestimation. It has been 2 weeks since the last official death toll was published by the Ministry of Health in Gaza due to the collapse of health services, which made counting the dead impossible. However, the latest unofficial count from the Government Information Ministry, published Wednesday, estimated that the 14,352 people had been killed, including 6,000 children and 4,000 women. Palestinian filmmaker Bisan Oda, whose social media reporting from Gaza has captivated millions of people all over the world, put the reality more plainly. Numbers from Gaza you need to know. 20,000 people were killed in 50 days of escalation. 7,000 of them still under the rubble. 8,000 of them are children. All of them are civilians. According to Gazan officials, 233,000 housing units, or approximately half the houses in Gaza, have been either destroyed or damaged. Bombs or missiles hit 266 schools, of which 67 have been destroyed. Israel has killed 205 healthcare providers and 64 journalists. The most striking element of the death toll is the massive scale of death among women and children. An article published in The Guardian on Sunday stated that Israel claims it has killed between 1,000 and 2,000 Hamas fighters. Even if this were true, it would mean that for every fighter killed, Israel has killed 3 to 6 children, and that between 85 to 92% of those killed are civilians. On Sunday, the New York Times published a front-page article explaining that the massive death toll among women and children in the Gaza war is without precedent in the 21st century. Israel has cast the deaths of civilians in the Gaza Strip as a regrettable but unavoidable part of modern conflict. But a review of past conflicts and interviews with casualties and weapons experts suggests that Israel's assault is different. The Times notes, more than twice as many women and children have already been reported killed in Gaza than have been confirmed killed in Ukraine, according to United Nations figures, after almost 2 years of Russian attacks. The report goes on to say that 70% of all deaths reported in Gaza are women and children, even though most resistant fighters are men. In past clashes between Israel and Hamas, for example, about 60% of the reported deaths in Gaza were men, the Times wrote. The article notes that Israel's use of 2,000-pound bombs eclipses anything seen in previous 21st century wars. The Times reports, citing a U.S. official, that roughly 90% of the munitions Israel dropped in Gaza were satellite-guided bombs weighing 1 to 2,000 pounds. The Times writes, in fighting during this century, by contrast, U.S. military officials often believed that the most common American aerial bomb, a 500-pound weapon, was far too large for most targets when battling the Islamic State in urban areas like Mosul, Iraq, and Raqqa, and Syria. The Times article, like everything it publishes, is crafted and vetted to protect American state interests, while presenting statistics that can only be explained by the willful targeting of the civilian population. The Times is careful never to connect these actions to the statements of Israeli officials, who have repeatedly stated their aim is to kill Palestinian civilians. Earlier this month, Israeli President Isaac Herzog said the entire population of Gaza was responsible for the October 7th attack in southern Israel, declaring, "It is an entire nation out there that is responsible. It is not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being aware, not involved. It is absolutely not true." Asked whether that makes them, by implication, legitimate targets, Herzog replied, "When you have a missile in your goddamn kitchen and you want to shoot it at me, am I allowed to defend myself?" Last month, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," invoking the biblical passage that commands, "Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly," Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said last month. As Craig Mokhiber, former director of the New York office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, explained, explicit statements of intent by leaders in the Israeli government and military leaves no room for doubt or debate that Israel is engaging in a textbook case of genocide. In other words, to use the language of the Times, Israel's assault is different from earlier wars, not just in the scale of death among the civilian population, but in the willingness of Israeli officials to admit they have a deliberate aim of killing as many civilians as possible. Everything Israel has done, moreover, has been coordinated with the Biden administration. All the 2,000-pound bombs it has dropped on Gaza were made in the United States and supplied by the Pentagon. From the standpoint of Israel and U.S. imperialism, one of the aims of the pause is to resupply the Israeli military, which the Biden administration is eagerly carrying out. While the Times attempts to distance Israel's assault on the population of Gaza from the U.S. invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, the genocide in Gaza marks an expansion of the crimes of U.S. imperialism. These wars killed over 1 million people and involved the use of torture, kidnapping, and rape as state policy. Not one single elected official or military officer was charged, let alone went to prison for these vast crimes. Now, as the images from the destruction of Gaza demonstrate, U.S. and world imperialism are carrying out crimes on an even larger scale and are preparing yet greater ones for the future. Stopping the genocide in Gaza requires the building of a mass anti-war movement of the international working class, armed with a socialist perspective. A key demand of this movement must be that those responsible for these war crimes, including not just Israeli civilians and military officials, but also leaders in Washington, Paris, London, and Berlin, are prosecuted for war crimes. I mean, that's going to require a full-scale revolution, is it not? Like, we're never going to be able to elect people in this system. Yep, the WSWS had a scathing article on the sellout Bernie Sanders today, titled "Bernie Sanders, the Left Face of Genocide." Good. Good. Sanders is a sellout. I think his goal was always to sell us out. I consider him to be the Hulk Hogan in the system, right? The hero role. That someone needs to play the hero and someone needs to play the heel. And Bernie Sanders plays the hero. but he still does what he's told, and he still gets paid by Vince McMahon. And it's as simple as that. Eric writes, I had to leave for a bit. I'm back. Thanks for reading. You actually missed a part where you said the Women Institute doesn't do jack shit since the bourgeois feminism instead of real feminism. Of course she takes offense to that. She thinks media is king, yeah. Watch Hillary Clinton commentary over Palestine, Israel. Yeah, like, I'm sorry, if you're a Hillary head, like, if you actually think that, like, Hillary Clinton is like a voice that you should 100% be listening to outside of just listening to what the crazy people have to say, I just think that you're lost in the weeds. Like, you're just totally lost in the weeds. Like, what makes you think that Hillary Clinton is someone we should be taking seriously? Like, she's the stereotypical boomer character, and her Karen, and her name is actually Karen. Perfect. I look forward to hearing more from your boomer. Like, what's so infuriating about all of this is that, like, the best the left is coming up with, right? We're going to do a wealth tax, 1% over $10 million. Meanwhile, Gilded Age for billionaire offspring as $5.2 trillion of wealth transfers accelerate. Without robust wealth and inheritance taxes, says one analyst, the children and grandchildren of today's billionaires will dominate our future: politics, economy, culture, and philanthropy. The Swiss bank UBS released a report Thursday showing that a massive transfer of wealth from billionaire business founders to their heirs is underway and accelerating, with trillions of dollars in assets moving from those who accumulated fortunes through entrepreneurship to family members whose vast riches are owed to the simple accident of birth. Entrepreneurship seems to be the word that we're using for ruthless exploitation. These people figured out how to ruthlessly exploit those around them the most effective. Yeah, they're so great. In the 12-month period between April 2022 and April 2023, newly created billionaires acquired more wealth through inheritance than entrepreneurship for the first time since UBS began studying billionaire wealth trends in 2015. The bank, a friend of the super rich, said that 53 heirs inherited nearly $151 billion in wealth during the study period, exceeding the $140.7 billion amassed by billionaire entrepreneurs. I love how they're trying to frame this as if it's like, well, we are ostensibly against the idea of people just inheriting wealth, but entrepreneurs, right? Parasites that sit on the side of useful enterprise and do nothing of value whatsoever but siphon away the profits created by the workers. That's valuable. It's completely valuable having total parasites in the system. So what I'm reading here is $300 billion given to parasites by parasites. This year's report found that the majority of billionaires that accumulated wealth in the last year did so through inheritance, as opposed to entrepreneurship. Benjamin Cavalli, head of strategic clients at UBS Global Wealth Management, said in a statement, "This is a theme we expect to see more of over the next 20 years. Yeah, it's what's called an inevitability. That even if you want to believe that entrepreneurship has value in the society and actually creates value, like, eventually it just becomes rich cocksuckers passing money on to their rich cocksucker children. That's all it is." The latest edition of Billionaire Ambitions report estimates that the number of global billionaires rose by 7% during the one-year period analyzed by UBS, up from 2,376 to 2,544. That number should be zero. That number should be zero. Basically, this is just keeping track of the cancer, right? Looks like cancer rates are going up. Man, if only we could do something about the cancer. It's a shame that the people speaking out against the cancer are like, you know what we should do? We should get rid of 1% of the cancer. That'll do it. That'll absolutely do it. After falling in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, during which billionaire wealth soared as millions died across the globe, billionaires' collective net worth recovered by 9% in nominal terms, from USD 11 trillion to USD 12 trillion, UBS found. Isn't that great news? I'm so great that they were able to recover trillions of dollars for doing nothing at all. Man, it's so nice to know that literally it's like less than 3,000 parasites. Like, it's less than 3,000 people we're talking about here. Like, isn't that great? Like, less than 3,000 people. And that's what's causing the collapse of our whole ecological system. Man. And wouldn't it be great if we actually put together in our heads that, like, hey, wait a minute, these people have names and addresses. They live places you can go and visit and look at. After falling in the wake of the coronavirus, I already read that, UBS estimates that more than 1,000 billionaires are over the age of 70 and poised to hand a combined $5.2 trillion down to their heirs over the next several decades. I really want to make this clear to, like, everybody. How you going to pay for that? Oh, we should eliminate 1,000 parasites. If we eliminated 1,000 parasites from the system, we would have $5.2 trillion in assets and in value. But they earned it. They earned it. They earned it by being born to rich people. And those rich people, you know, they made their wealth by literally having, like, slave mines and shit. Like, it's just getting, like, really obvious what's happening, and it just seems like we're too stupid to put it together, you know? No, it's not that we're we're just in this kind of state of constipation. We're just in this, like, and people just don't know what to do, and they're clearly unwilling to actually do what needs to be done, right? Like, tax these people out of existence completely. While this great wealth handover has long been anticipated, UBS said, data suggests that it's now gathering momentum. Chuck Collins, director of the program on inequality and the common good at the Institute for Policy Studies, told Common Dreams that this is how wealth dynasties are formed. The so-called self-made billionaires invest in wealth defense to pass as much wealth to future generations within their families, he said. Collins argued that this ongoing wealth transfer should be an occasion for substantial inheritance taxes, but given the porous and weak state of such taxes, we're seeing dynastic oligarchies grow. Without robust wealth and inheritance taxes, these intergenerational concentrations of wealth and power will grow, said Collins. The children and grandchildren of today's billionaires will dominate our future politics, economy, culture, and philanthropy, with huge billion-dollar legacy foundations. It's true that a small segment of the next generation will redeploy and redistribute some of this wealth to more socially positive ventures and organizations. No, they won't. What evidence do you It is true. Just hold on a second here. These billionaires are not vampiric parasites that are funding Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. No. They're gonna actually do things that are good. You'll see. Just wait for it. Certainly don't revolt and overthrow the system. But at this point, this is a tiny percentage, and not a substitute for a progressive tax system where the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes. Or crazy idea, don't exist. Just don't exist. Like, just don't exist. Like, you have $1 million, great, you're done. Finished. Thanks for playing. You won. Here's your trophy. Right? Go away. The UBS report notes that billionaires will inherit wealth seem more reticent than first-generation billionaires to pledge their fortunes to philanthropy, which the ultra-rich often use to avoid taxes. I love it. I love that even in this article, they're like, yeah, they might do nice things, but come on, they're just doing it to avoid taxes. According to UBS, just under a quarter of first and later generation billionaires said that they are concerned about developments in taxation an indication they don't believe world leaders will heed growing global calls for new taxes, targeting the fortune of the mega rich and their offspring. Oxfam International observed earlier this year that 2/3 of countries don't have any inheritance taxes. And half of the world's billionaires live in those countries, allowing them to pass huge wealth down to the future generations tax-free. A new, powerful, and unaccountable aristocracy is being created in front of our eyes. Waka waka don't want. And what are they doing with their money? Let's be honest, man. Like, what are they doing with their money? They're doing everything they can to destroy our economies and destroy everything about. Right? Yeah, capitalism, you fight for what they give you. Socialism, you work for what you want. Hail Tosis, good to see you on Twitch. Encouraging thought for the day. We're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. Make friends, change the world. I love the book Walk Away by Cory Doctorow. Post-scarcity can free us from the billionaires. The Illuminati meme is dead. Yeah, I mean, we know who these people are. Like, the idea of the Illuminati is that they're like a shadow behind-the-scenes organization pulling the strings. And it's like, but no, we know who they are, right? Like, they're not shadowy at all. They're literally, like, we see them in like, the Financial Times. Like, you just need to read the newspaper. Hail Tosis writes, the SCOTUS is considering a case about wealth taxes on unrealized gains. Hopefully they split the baby and refuse to eliminate property taxes. Schools in the U.S. would lose 90% of their funding overnight. Invest in guillotine companies. Demand will rise sharply. I just found a gay and trans Nazi unironically on Twitter. That's phenomenal, dude. That's great, Command Genius. And Liga to Z experiencing YouTube censorship as always. Like, I mean, if you're a Nazi, you've already closed your brain off, right? So if it doesn't surprise me that you would find a Nazi that is also gay and trans, because if you're a Nazi, then you're the dumbest person alive. Period. Like, there's no one stupider than a Nazi, right? You're dangerous, obviously, but you're also deeply stupid. Like, this is what the rich do with their money. Jeff Bezos acquires $500 million worth of single-family homes, driving up housing prices even more. Yeah, I wonder what's going on with our housing market. I wonder what's happening with our housing market. Real tough to figure out what's going on in the housing market. Yeah, real tough to figure out. Like, full scale revolution is required at this point. Like, these rich people cannot be permitted to exist. It simply cannot be the case that people are allowed to accumulate this much wealth. Full scale, period. No justification for it whatsoever. But they earned it is the same as saying Ted Bundy earned his kills. That's it. That if you are going to say, but they earned it in front of me, then I'm going to say, so why did Ted Bundy not earn his kills? Why did we put Ted Bundy in jail? He earned his kills, though, right? It took a lot of hard work. He had to plan. He had to buy a bunch of tools, right? He had to actually do it, right? That couldn't have been easy, right? So why isn't it the case that we just let him go free? Free market, right? If those people didn't want to get killed, then they should have just planned better, right? Skill issue, right? So why is it that Ted Bundy isn't allowed to just kill whoever he wants, right? Because he earned it. In the same way, I view this. People accumulating mass sums of wealth is just disgusting and indefensible. It shouldn't be permitted to do because the act of doing it itself is grotesque, and it should be removed from the society. It shouldn't be permissible. Command Genius writes, how does that happen? Nazis wants us dead. Why would you side with them? Do you hate black people that much? Yes. Like, yeah, dude. Like people who are on the far right, people who are in this sort of position of despicable hate are not rational, right? Like that's just the truth of it. Is that there is no such thing as consistency or coherence within their worldview. That they don't care about any of that. That they are being driven exclusively by a sense of their own kind of narcissistic superiority, and a sort of bloodlust, a drive to do damage to people. Like it's a despicable worldview, and it isn't about creating coherence or consistency in the worldview. It has nothing to do with it. That it is just about doing as much damage to people you despise as possible. That's what it's about. And so, of course, if you believe that you are a special person and that you are of the perfect race or whatever, then you believe that any rule that exists, you are exempt from. So if the people around you are saying we're against gay people, but you believe that you are special, then you believe that you are exempt from that because you are special, right? Chances are good that if you're a Nazi, you have real like player character syndrome going on, right? Which is that you believe that you're the main character and that everyone else is just an NPC, and that sort of thinking gets reinforced by the state and by the capitalist structure. They want everybody to believe that you are the player character. Don't treat this like a multiplayer game, right? It's not just one guy, there's multiple. Yeah. like Command Genius, this decline is going to be really, really fucking wild. There's going to be all kinds of really weird, strange situations that occur. Just oddball, weirdo shit that's going to make us all go like, what in the fuck are we even doing here? Like, what the fuck is this? And you're stumbling on one of them. Queer Nazis. Nazis for Hitler. Sorry, queer people for Hitler. Gays for Hitler. We love the fashion. And of course, like, while this is happening, right, here's what The Economist is writing about. What a third world war would mean for investors. Dude, this one's pretty... Oh, is this one... Oh, come on, get out of here. Get out of here, The Economist. We're going to copy. Sidestep. No one is seeing what is happening. Do not look behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I feel like my internet is being like throttled, you know? I feel like in the last month my internet has become a bit throttled. The Economist has become a finance bro. Dude, The Economist was always a finance bro. It's just become like more grotesque. That's all. That instead of being like, hitherto and forthwith upon analysis of it's like, guys, check it out. Like, that's it. It's being run by people who watched Wolf of Wall Street and were like, that's a good guy. That's what we should be trying to do. Europe had been moving towards the slaughterhouse for years, and by 1914 a conflict was all but inevitable. That, at least, is the argument often made in hindsight. Yet, at the time, as Neil Ferguson, a historian, noted in a paper published in 2008, it did not feel that way to investors. For them, the First World War came as a shock. Until the week before it erupted, prices in the bond, currency, and money markets barely budged. Then all hell broke loose. The city has seen in a flash the meaning of war, wrote this newspaper on August 1st, 1914. So first paragraph, investors are morons, right? Investors don't know what's going on. They don't pay attention to what's going on in the world. Big, gigantic, major wars and conflict catch them off guard. Investors are morons. Paragraph 1. Could financial markets once again be underpricing the risk of a global conflict? In the nightmare scenario, the descent into a third world war began 2 years ago as Russian troops amassed on the Ukrainian border. Shut up. Fuck you. Fuck you, you fucking illiterate dumbass morons. Right? I love this. I love that, like, America can invade Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. It can bomb Somalia and Ethiopia. It can just be looming at the doorstep of Iran, and that's not considered a world war. Nobody's sitting here being like, World War III, oh my goodness. Like, literally, we have spent more money and time in the Middle East than we spent on World War II, and nobody is calling this World War III. Literally, no one is calling it World War III, right? And I think the reason why no one's calling it World War III is because no one would take that credibly. Like, nobody in the Middle East is capable. Like, it's not a war. Like, it's not a war, right? It's just like a mass-scale genocide that we're just, like, cleansing the land with, right? We're just going into countries that have no army or air force, right? And just USA, 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 and then stealing their money. But if Russia pushes ever so slightly into Ukraine in order to fight against neo-Nazis shelling ethnic Russians, it's the beginning of World War III. Oh! What do you expect from people who, like, self-admit to their stupidity? Investors are stupid. So, today, Israel's battle against Hamas. Like, they're so dumb. Like, they're so fucking dumb. And evil. Like, evil. They're so fucking dumb and evil. Like, it's so obvious how dumb and evil these people are. Today, Israel's battle against Hamas has the frightening potential to spill across its border. American military support is crucial to both Ukraine and Israel. And in Iraq and Syria, the superpowers' bases have come under fire, probably from proxies of Iran. Should China... I cannot wait to see what these idiots have to say about China. These fucking dumb, illiterate morons. I would love to be able to like, how do you get a job being professionally wrong? Like, how do you get these jobs where you just get to write garbage? Just blah, 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 like it's written by a fucking AI. Like, write something as if it's being written by America itself. Should China decide it is time to take advantage of a distracted superpower and invade Taiwan, America could all too easily end up being drawn into 3 wars at once. It's almost as though it's already a world war. It's almost as though it's already a world war. And that you guys are too stupid to understand that you're the Nazis. Huh? Isn't that great? That America is the Nazis in the world stage, and you guys are just too stupid to understand it. The rest of the world risks those wars interlocking and turning into something even more devastating. Like, you've got to report on all these wars as if they're disparate and disconnected. Certainly they're not all just one front being pushed forward by a Nazi regime called America. This scenario would, of course, place financial damage a long way down on the list of horrors. Even so, I love this. It's literally like, we understand that there's human life and all of this, but this article's about money. And that's what we're here to talk about, right? We're here to talk about money. Even so, it is part of an investor's job to consider exactly what it would mean for their portfolio. Oh, these people are so evil. Like, this is so, like, bleak and dark. And they're just like typing it up. Like, yep, we got to pay attention to the money, the invisible currency that we created. So far, the possibility of a world war has barely caused a tremor in the markets because you're already in the world war, you dumb fuck. This is a war market. You stupid dumb moron. You're in a war market right now. Look at Lockheed Martin's profit margins, you dumb fucking idiot. True, they have for some time now been more seized by fear than greed. Like, what? True, they have for some time now been more seized by fear than greed. Bond prices have been turbulent, even for supposedly risk-free American treasuries, and yields have been climbing most of this year. Stock indices in America, China, and Europe have fallen for 3 consecutive months. Yet this choppiness can all be plausibly explained by peacetime factors, including outsized government borrowing, interest rate expectation, and shareholders whose previous optimism had got the better of them. Or you're already in a war. America's been in war for like 20 plus years now. And you're talking about peacetime factors? What peacetime exactly is it that you're talking about, you dummy? What's this peacetime you're talking about, you fucking dumbass? America's literally been at war since at least 2001. Like, well before that, of course, hence 9/11. But peacetime factors. Okay. In short, it does not look anything like the panic you might expect if the odds of the world entering into war were edging higher. Yeah, because war has been normalized, it's totally cool, right? Like, war has been completely normalized and people are numb to it and our souls are dead to the concept of the millions of people that we're constantly eviscerating, right? So just so people aren't panicking, so there's no war. The brightest conclusion, I'm looking forward to the brightest conclusion, is that such odds really are close to zero, right? If you ignore the fact that we're already in war, a darker one is that, like the investors of 1914, today's may soon be blindsided. History points to a third possibility, that even if investors expect a major war, there is little they can do to reliably profit from it. Henry Ford literally sold the engines to the Nazis. I feel like the investors of the past have done a really great job in profiting from war, right? And if you think that they haven't, then I think you might just be a dumb, illiterate moron. Man, they let anybody write this stuff, eh? You just gotta write an article that makes it sound like America is good. The easiest way to understand this, says somebody who probably doesn't understand much of anything going on, is to imagine yourself in 1914. Okay, everybody, let's step into the Wayback Machine. Woo, 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 woo. We're in 1914. Doodaloo, 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 doodaloo. Knowing that the First World War was about to arrive. You would need to place your bets quickly. Within weeks, the main exchanges in London, New York, and continental Europe would be closed. They would stay that way for months. Would you be able to guess how many and which way? I love that they're talking about this as if the average citizen were the financiers of World War I. Like, literally, this is like just before like a robber baron period. Like, the people who have money in 1914 are literally like a small cadre of psychopaths. Like, there isn't like some working stiff being like, well, I'm going to go put my money on the stock exchange. Like, that's not fucking happening. Like, if it is, it's like penny stocks and just out of intrigue and interest. Like, J.D. Rockefeller would be the guy that you're probably more interested in talking to. Would you have been able to guess how many and which way the war might have turned by then? If you wisely judged American stocks to be a good bet, Would you have managed to trade with a broker who avoided bankruptcy amid a liquidity crisis? You might have decided again wisely to trim positions in soon-to-be war-strained government debt. Would you have guessed that Russian bonds, which would experience a communist revolution and Bolshevik-driven default, were the ones to dump completely? Like, just the way this guy is talking about this, as if we're all out there with like $1,000 in the stock market, like, well, let's, and that's what really matters. This is what's pushing the needles, guys. What's pushing the needle out there is like one guy with $1,000 being like, oh, I got to place my bets on the stock market. I also love how this article like tacitly shows that the stock market is gambling, that our entire economy is based on just a prognostication of the future done by morons with money. Yeah, this is the best way to build an economy, right? It's just reinforcing the decision I've made about the third pillar of capitalism, that it's the worship of chaos. The stock market is inherently chaotic. And this article is basically just confirming that, just being like, yep, it's total chaos. Make money. War, in other words, involves a level of radical uncertainty. Huh? What did I just say? Radical uncertainty. What is that if not chaos? Worship it. Far beyond the calculable risks to which most investors have become accustomed. This means that even previous world wars have limited lessons for later ones, since no two are alike. Mr. Ferguson's paper shows that the optimal playbook for 1914, buy commodities and American stocks, sell European bonds, stocks, and currencies, was of little use in the late 1930s. Investors in that decade did try to learn from history. Anticipating another world war, they sold continental European stocks and currencies. But this different war had different winning investments. British stocks beat American ones, and so did British government bonds. Today, there is a greater and more terrible source of uncertainty, since many of the potential belligerent powers wield nuclear war. Nuclear war. Little financial relevance. After all, in a nuclear conflagration, your portfolio would be unlikely to rank highly among your priorities. The upshot of it all, that the fog of war is even thicker for investors than it is for military generals, who at least have sight of the action. If the worst happens, future historians might wonder about the seeming insouciance of today's investors. They will only be able to do so because for them, the fog will have cleared. And I love this guy like ends this with like this like false profundity, using a word like insouciance, which, what's this word even mean? What's this word even mean? Insouciance. Like, casual lack of concern. So he could have just said the seeming indifference of today's investors, but instead he decides to use the word insouciance. I love that this is essentially just like apologetics for how stupid we are. This is just like dumbass apologetics. Like, yeah, we're going to make a bunch of stupid decisions very quickly. Very stupid decisions as fast as we possibly can. But, you know, it's, you know, hindsight's 2020, you know. Just, you know, hindsight's 2020. So, you know, well, you couldn't have seen it coming, you know. And what really matters during these wars is not like the nuclear conflagration. It's your portfolio. That's what really matters. I feel like reading that article was more difficult than reading the article about a literal genocide. Like, at least when I was reading the article about the literal genocide, I felt like the person who was writing it was well informed and was trying to convey a serious message about a serious topic. Whereas I feel like this guy was literally just paid by capitalists to basically be like, make an article that, acts as apologetics for why we're so fucking stupid all the time. Capitalists can't predict the future, we're just trying to do our best, because we have no plan. We never actually sit down and make a plan together. We're always in conflict with one another. We're too stupid to realize that if you sit down and actually make a plan, it's probably a better way to do than worshiping the fucking chaos market that we have. Market power. Have we already celebrated the assumption of Kissinger's descent into hell? Yes. The entire first hour of today's stream was basically about that. And so, good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Hit the bells, hit the whistles, do the stuff. Tell people I exist. Let people know. Speaking of horrible things and how the world is going to hell, U.S. fossil fuel extraction hits an all-time high in 2023. In 2023, the United States is expected to extract a higher amount of oil and gas than ever before. Despite warnings about the threat of climate change from President Joe Biden himself, the U.S. continues to solidify its position as the world's leading producer of fossil fuels. Bark up, bonk, we're very dumb. Yes, we are. We're very dumb. Yes, we are. Do. Haltosis, don't elevate Kissinger to that above a station of Satan himself. No, I prefer to think that Kissinger, when he's in hell, becomes abused as he should be. That the denizens of hell will treat him like the worthless, pathetic worm that he actually is. That he's not going to rule in hell. No. He's not good enough for that. Like, that's the thing about Kissinger, like, ruling in hell. I'm like, no, like, Kissinger's not that clever. Like, he's not that interesting a figure. Like, he's not really that smart. He's just a little bug. Like, he's just this creepy little worm that's willing to murder people. Right? And so that's basically how he maintains his position of power, is that he's willing to massacre people in big ways. But he's not smart. He's not an intelligent person. He's just a psychopath that was in the right position to murder people. So, I love this headline. I really do. So we're heading towards COP28. The very serious, absolutely going to be a meaningful meeting of world powers where they come together to actually discuss climate change and actually talk about, like, hey, maybe we should do something. And I love this headline. At COP28 Climate Summit, there's concern. Oil and gas lobbyists have too much influence. Like, this is how dim-witted our leadership has become, and how dim-witted our media has become. That there's concern, you guys. People are sort of contemplating and thinking about the idea that maybe oil and gas lobbyists have too much influence. Ha 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 ha. Like, when did we become this stupid? Like, when did we become this dim-witted, where we're sitting here being like, yeah, it's concerning. No. These people are running the show. It's really, really obvious that what they say goes. And what our elected leaders think is of no concern whatsoever to these people. That they literally write the legislation, and then our quote-unquote leaders take that legislation and just pass it, probably without even reading it. With tens of thousands in Dubai for the climate talks, environmentalists and policy experts are expressing concern over the growing presence of fossil fuel lobbyists at the meeting. COP28 is viewed by climate scientists and activists as a pivotal conference to cutting global greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels. After a summer of record-setting heat, a slew of recent reports has shown a need to quickly transition away from oil and gas towards renewables or face ever-rising global temperatures. An analysis from a coalition of advocacy groups found representatives of the fossil fuel industry have been in attendance a total of 7,200 times at the annual United Nations climate talks over the past 2 decades. There is a conflict of interest there. Andrianen, what's his name? Andriane Brazeau, a policy analyst with the Montreal-based environmental group Equiterre, said in an interview before heading to Dubai, "It's a bit like inviting tobacco companies to a health summit." I just love how downplayed all the language is. We're concerned. We're concerned. It's a bit like last year, Canada had one of the largest delegations from the fossil fuel sector, second only to Russia, according to an analysis by the Associated Press. 11 representatives from the industry were part of the Canadian delegation. In all, close to 400 people connected to fossil fuel industries attended the climate conference in 2022, a grouping that was larger than all but 2 of the national delegations sent by countries, according to AP Data's analysis of the more than 24,000 participants. I love COP28 is being overseen by Sultan Al Jaber, the CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, one of the world's largest oil producers. This is a very serious thing that's definitely going to matter. They're 100% going to do things, guys. We're 100%. We have a fellow by the name of Benevolent Fire, 27. Bro, what's up? I was born in the Soviet Union. Oh, okay, how old are you, dude? Because if you're my age and you were born in the Soviet Union, I don't give a fuck. Who cares? Yeah, I was born the year the Soviet Union dissolved. I was born the year that they got rid of the Soviet Union. Cool. I mean, that's kind of interesting. If you were born in the Soviet Union in 1960. Yeah, I think 1960. Then I would probably listen. I'd probably be more interested. Because, when the Soviet Union dissolved, one of the things that I've seen people arguing for in, communist forums is, why do we not talk about the sharp economic decline that happened under capitalism post the dissolution of the Soviet Union? It's really, really clear that when the Soviet Union dissolved and free market capital was allowed to come in, that it created pretty major hardship for people in Russia, right? And the Eastern European nations, who were suddenly no longer part of a federated body and were just independent, experienced a massive economic decline, just swift, just off a cliff. And yet we're supposed to believe that okay, so Benevolent Fire, you're 35, so you're essentially telling me that you were born. Hold on, we could get real exact with this. Straight up, you were born the year the Soviet Union dissolved. Let's get real specific. What year did the Soviet Union collapse? Sure. I like to use the word dissolve because that's actually more accurate. 1991. So if you're 35, that means that you were born. Oh, you're making me do this fucking math. How dare you? Because if you were 30, oh my fucking God. Yeah, that'd be 2000. Thank you, June. Jesus Christ, I'm too tired for this. I'm getting too old for this shit, you guys. 1988. So the Soviet Union dissolves when you're 3. Cool. You, sir, are technically correct. The best kind of correct. I'm like totally shitting on you, Benevolent Fire, but you haven't even like given an opinion. The only thing that you've actually said is, hey, I was born in the Soviet Union, and I'm like kind of shitting on you, and I'm sorry for that. I shouldn't be, especially now that you've said we all miss the great USSR. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm sorry for kind of shitting on you, dude. I just get like so many people who come in here and say really dumb things to me. Straight up. So I'm straight up in total apology mode when it comes to you, dude. Because literally, here's what happened. To everybody on YouTube who can't see this thread, it's literally this guy comes in and he just straight up says, first thing he says, bro, what's up? I was born in the Soviet Union. And I immediately just start shitting on him. Like, how old are you, dumbass? I don't give a shit, you fucking idiot. What a dumbass this guy is. He's like 35. I'm like, 35? That's nothing. You piece of shit. What a dumbass. Glad to have you, bud. I'm so happy to be talking to somebody who's you know what I should be asking is, so are you in Russia? I get some guys who come in and they're in Russia. Are you the world was a better place than the Soviet Union was around? Well, now you're just making me look like an asshole, Benevolent Fire. Kazakhstan. Didn't Kazakhstan just recently have like a pretty significant, I don't know if I want to call it revolution. I don't know what you would call it, but it was like a big political uprising during the COVID period, right? Everyone over 40 misses the USSR. That's a fact. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was a much more stable period. Like it seems like it was more beneficial for the workers and more beneficial for the working class, right? So I'm glad to hear that there's people out there. Yeah, almost 2 years. Yeah, dude, it was 2 years ago, wasn't it? Jeez Louise, seems like it was forever ago. What was the result of that? I don't get much by way of news out of Kazakhstan, right? Like, it's not like Western media is big on reporting from Kazakhstan. How did that resolve itself? Like, what would you describe as the result of that kind of uprising that happened in Kazakhstan? I've always been sort of curious about it, but I've never been able to find a really good source. So just like random guy on the internet who lives there, sure, hit me up. Oh, man. Eric, I feel like you and your aunt are going to kill one another. Climate change is reducing global GDP. Because that's what really matters, you guys. Right? I feel like the turning point of the turning point for our society is when rich people go, wait a minute, my money. But what they'll do is they'll just invest in the decline of the society. Because the whole thing is just gambling, right? So they'll just short American society. They'll just short American society, and then they'll make huge payouts in the gambling house. That's what's going to happen. A bunch of people got locked up. Nothing really changed. But the country is slowly moving towards democracy and reformation. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Because, like, these things always take a little bit of time, right? You can't just like snap your fingers and make it happen. But like, it's good to hear. Honestly, the fact that you're saying that a bunch of people got locked up, go Kazakhstan. I'm already in favor of what I'm hearing. The people rose up and locked up a bunch of politicians that were attempting to enforce some bullshit on them. Fuck yeah. Yeah, Kazakhstan is more democratic than Russia. That's not saying a whole lot. Russia is not a great democracy. I wouldn't point at Russia as an emblem of democracy any longer, right? Like the especially like like Putin is basically the president of Russia forever now until he dies. They don't really have like a very robust. They have like the trappings of a democratic system. There are parties and there are elections and there is stuff that happens, and it's not like Putin doesn't have to like can ignore that. He does have to respond, but it's not like somebody can challenge him. You know, he is the president for life, basically. So, climate change reducing global GDP. The report estimates that impacts from human-caused climate change cut 6.3% from global economic output last year, when weighed across populations. Climate change is already shaving billions off the world's economy, with developing countries hardest hit, according to a newest report published Tuesday. Oh. You know what? I blame the CIA. The CIA doesn't want me to be reporting on this. It's probably just some dumb ad that popped up. All right, farewell. I don't need to deal with that. I just think like what a fucking like I'm really struggling to take any of this seriously anymore. You know? Like I'm like reporting on it and it's all very serious stuff. It's going to be all very dramatic when it starts like really sideblinding us as a people, right? It's going to be very serious and it's going to be like a ridiculous kind of situation. Tikas Bazaar, it's good to see you. But like I don't know. I can't take it seriously anymore because the people who are in power are so like cartoonishly evil. The simping liberals who act as like apologists for all of this are so overtly obviously pathetic. And it's so clear that they're as pathetic as it can get. Just courtiers for the fossil fuel industry and for the financial banking system. So obviously attempting to convince all of us that like, oh yeah, we really do actually care. We care about what's going on in your life. Yeah, we absolutely do for sure. That's why we do nothing constantly. That's why we're constantly doing nothing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Like, at least conservatives don't lie. At least they're straight up just like, yeah, we're going to destroy the planet and the species. We don't give a fuck. Money for us. Fuck off. Like, ugh. And we just keep going along with it. We just keep going to work. We just keep, like, plugging along, pretending as though this is normal. This is a normal way for a society to organize itself. Completely normal as we just careen headfirst into the side of a mountain. Like, oh hey, we've got satellite images of the polar ice caps being destroyed. Like, straight up. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. Like, the New York subway system is going to stop being usable, right? Like when the water comes up, the New York subway, it's already starting to flood with regularity. Yeah. No more ice? That's where the giant oil wells will go. Exactly. Benevolent Fire says, you might not know this, but in the opening days of the 2022 invasion, Russia actually requested military support from Kazakhstan. But our president said no, thankfully. That's not really Kazakhstan's fight, is it? Like, I'm like ostensibly how to say this accurately, to be as accurate as possible. I understand why Russia invaded Ukraine. I don't buy into the Western narrative that Putin's a madman and he's the next Hitler and he's going into Ukraine because he wants resources and all this kind of stuff and yabba yabba yabba. I don't buy into any of that. I think that Russia had pretty legitimate reasons to want to go into Ukraine, but and I understand why they would ask neighbors for support, but again, like neighbors would probably be like, yeah. Especially like Kazakhstan. Like it's not like you and Russia have like the greatest relationship going on since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, right? Like I kind of, if you guys were still a federated body, it'd be a different story, but the Azovites might just turn 180 and end up in Poland. The Azov people. No, Eric, another argument with your aunt, basically saying I'm not doing anything to change anything. And of course, if I hate capitalism enough, why if you love communism so much, why don't you just leave? Jesus Christ, this argument is so fucking stupid. I can't even begin to understand why people even say it. Right? Like it's such a stupid argument to use. Can we think of reasons why we might not move to a country where we don't know the language, we don't know anybody, and we have no job? Yeah, it's practically impossible to organize, and the only way to do so is to talk with people. People are not willing to organize, yeah. This conversation goes perfectly well with the debate I had with Karen where she argued I should join a climate change group. If it actually works, why do things only get worse? I mean, this is why the only organization that's worth spending any time on any longer is one that is discussing serious revolution. Serious revolutionary movements are the only thing. Serious revolutions are the only thing that we should be discussing any longer, because the system is irredeemable and irreformable. As long as there are capitalists in the conversation at all, as long as there is a single capitalist who is being interviewed and taken seriously as a voice in the conversation, then we are on the wrong path. That it is not until we actually overthrow the system of the dictatorship of capital and get rid of these capitalists that anything can even begin to be addressed. Because as long as you're negotiating with a psychopath class whose job and whose desire in all of it is to destroy us, then you can never actually achieve any goals. As long as any oxygen in the room is taken up by people whose objective is to destroy you, then you can't move forward. And so this is why a full-scale revolution is what will be required. And any movement that you join that has any objective that is less than that, I just don't see the point. Yeah, capitalism is a road to nowhere. Yeah. Well, that's not true, Benevolent Fire. It is definitely a road to somewhere. It's just that road is to hell, right? That capitalism is a road to our destruction. Eric, man, I think you're just gonna have, if you are actually seriously going to engage in conversation with this person, you're gonna have to take it down to its barest bones, right? Like, she's a person who's bought into the idea that the system of capital is good, and you're gonna have to start to get her to defend that position. Like, and the system of capital is indefensible. Like, you can't actually defend it, because it's a system of exploitation that uses genocide and war in order to expand itself. And that's how it's designed. That's the basis of its existence. That if it didn't use war and genocide to expand itself, and it didn't use exploitive models, then it would cease to be capitalism. That it would become something different. And like, it sounds to me like she just refuses to accept that reality exists, and that there are actually like real models that exist. She seems to think that the people who own the system are somehow decision makers, or somehow making decisions outside of make money for me. Like people like the Walton family don't actually make decisions in the Walmart empire. That the decisions that the Waltons make are they go to the board of directors and they say, more money for me, please. And they go to the CEOs and they say, more money for me, please. And the CEOs go, okay. And then they look at their spreadsheets for the Waltons and they discover how they can make more money for the Waltons. And if that means that they've got to lay off 20% of their workforce, right, then they will. If it means that they need to suppress wages, then they will. Right? Renovatio, technically, 93. I wonder what her excuse is for Americans not having money this holiday season. They're just lazy. That's all, Reno. They're just lazy. They're just not working hard enough. Nobody wants to work anymore. I mean, Tesla is set for a little bit, but there's only 18 months of cheap lithium left. Demand will catch up to supply, and the U.S. won't have their mining refining capacity ready. Small window of cheap batteries. I mean, look, I feel like Elon Musk's entire empire is an empire of illusions. He is a grifter and a con man. That is explicitly who he is. That his objective is not to improve the quality of life or improve the situation for Americans or for even the world. His objective is to be famous. His objective is to be popular. That's it. That's his only MO, and that's the only thing he does. That he doesn't actually care about the wealth. He doesn't care about the money. He doesn't care about prosperity. He doesn't care about he doesn't care about any of that. He cares about being wealthy. About being famous. He wants people to know who he is and to worship him. That's what he wants. And it's so obvious that that's the case. Like, if he actually cared about the well-being of anybody, he would be investing heavily in housing, affordable housing for people. But yeah, Musk is very upset about Twitter X. Do you see him talking about it as his last interview? Ugly expression on that mug. I mean, his purchase of Twitter was always like a vanity project, and it was never going to succeed. Yeah, Elmo was wearing an IDF military tag when he said "Go F yourself." Yep. But he could afford to say that. Like, none of this matters to him. Like, once you're past $1 billion, nothing matters. Like, what's the big fallout for him? For real. Like, what's the big fallout for Elon Musk? Twitter goes under. Oh my God, it's a horrible thing. Oh, Tesla goes under. Oh my God, it's a horrible thing. Oh my God, SpaceX ends up being a total fraud and it goes nowhere. Oh my God, everything's a disaster. Okay, so he dies with $10 billion. Right? Like that's the true story about Elon Musk, is that none of this matters to him. This is all just faffing. He could just do what he wants. And because we let him. She thinks that her individual actions is able to change the society. For example, she's helping to recycle stuff, and she is helping the environment. Yeah, you should break it to her that most recycling just goes to the dump. Right? Like, most recycling just goes to the dump. Like, we set up all these little blue bins, and we separated all our bins into trash and recycling, and you know what happens? All of that goes into the same bin. Like, individual actions. It's the illusion of individualism. To make people like her feel as though there is a difference in what's going on and that she's helping. When the truth is that when she takes a little bottle, she puts it in the recycling slot, it's just a different tube to the dump. No, dude, it sounds like she's not twisting your words. It sounds like she's just stupid. Like, that's all. Like, it just sounds like she lives in a kind of demented world where reality doesn't exist. Like, that's it. Like, once you believe that angels are real and that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, right? And that capitalism works. Like once you believe these sort of obvious delusional lies, then it's not that they're twisting your words. It's just that they don't acknowledge reality exists. And you can't really rationalize someone out of a position they didn't rationalize themselves into in the first place. So they're just living in this sort of state of demented delusion where it's not until the actual hard reality of what their actions mean slap them directly in the face that they'll even begin to confront them meaningfully. Yeah, liberals spending another $8 billion on new surveillance aircraft. We can't help the poor. How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for that? Yeah, X is losing advertisers. Musk's threatened his clients with reputational destruction if they don't save the platform. He's very upset. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I good, I guess. Like, I hope he is upset. Like, I hope his little feelings are hurt. Like, it's just, oh, it's the consequences of my own actions. Oh, I can't believe. The only clip I've actually heard of him say anything is like, well, I hope they know they're destroying the platform. And like the response is like, yeah, we know, dude. Like we know we're destroying the platform. Like, something like Twitter should never have been privatized in the first place, right? Like this should be something that is it is of the national interest to have something like this existing. That it should be a crown corporation. It should be like a ministry. It shouldn't be some creepy little weirdo who gets to own this thing and having it being funded by advertisers. Like this is just the stupidest fucking model. It should be a public resource that is funded through taxation. That's what it should be. For example, when I talk about the self-made billionaire, she twisted it and it said, I shouldn't get any help from anyone then. What? That doesn't make any sense. Right? Like, there's no such thing as a self-made billionaire, first of all. And then she says, I shouldn't get any help from anyone then. That doesn't make any sense. That's incoherent. Yeah, no, look, Eric, dude, like, I don't know why you're talking to this brick wall. Like it just sounds to me like every single time you come into this chat, you've got your knickers in a twist because you've got a religious acolyte who has closed their brain off to reality. And when you actually present them with reality, they just ignore it because it doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't actually matter to them. That's the really hard truth, right? Is that when you become like a detached acolyte of capital, the reason you can maintain this detachment is because you never actually have to face the actual consequences of what capitalism is or what it stands for, right? You've accepted the degree of your own exploitation. You've accepted the degree of your exploitation and rationalized it to yourself, saying that this was my choice all along. This was freedom. I made these decisions for myself, actually. And that's just a coping mechanism and a way to rationalize your own exploitation under capital. And so once you do that, then you can just cut yourself off from all of the consequences of capital. And you could just say that no, capitalism's actually the greatest system ever. And when somebody confronts you with reality, you could just put it in the same hole that you put it in when somebody says Jesus isn't real. Right? Like, it's the same kind of magical thinking. It's just you're talking to somebody who believes that magic is real. That's all. It's just instead of the magic being Jesus, the magic is capitalism. And that the magical system of capital is actually good somehow. And you can confront them with very obvious facts and obvious reality. And I just don't know why you're bothering yourself. I wouldn't. If a person like this was chirping at me, I'd literally just be like, but you don't care about reality. Like, you don't care about facts. Why should I talk to you about this? Like, unless you're going to start acknowledging facts and reality, then we're done. And I've got no reason to continue with you. Just leave me alone. Go away. You're bothering me. Like, I just don't see why you're troubling yourself. Because, like, it's pretty clear that she's decided magic is real. Like, I literally would be like, you just think magic is real. Like, why should I bother myself with someone who thinks magic is real? Like, move on, get out of here. Like, stop wasting your breath. I don't think magic is real. I think reality exists and that there are real things that are really happening with evidence that we can prove, with, like, facts that we can see with our eyes, and you think magic is real. So I'm not having the discussion anymore. I just don't know why I should waste my time. Oh my God. Lovely Pink comes in with the absolute most brain dead comment. Ukrainian famine is real too, though, buddy. Yeah, the famine was real. That's true. We can agree on that. Can you show me Stalin's speeches or the planning documents for the intentional famine? Oh, you want to talk about this? This is a visualization guide for your emotions. It has nothing to do with spiritualization. But if you want to continue talking about things you don't understand, you can go ahead with that, and I can set the record straight with you. Like, you don't actually know anything about the Ukrainian famine, nor do you know anything about the chakras. So, like, when we look at the Palestinian genocide, we have documents, right? Like, here's the planning document. Comes out of Israeli intelligence, confirmed by Netanyahu himself. Netanyahu has given speeches where he's literally quoted Bible verses talking about cleansing Gaza. Like, murder their children, murder their wives, murder their mothers, murder their animals, right? Literally the ministers are saying that the people in Gaza are animals. So, do you have anything like that in regards to Stalin? Do you have Stalin saying speeches? Do you have a planning document like this? Do you have anything? Right? No. What do you have? You got a bunch of Nazis making the claim. Oh, okay. So that's something I should definitely take seriously. I should definitely take it seriously when Nazis say something. Oh, okay. Or I should actually believe and understand that genocides are massive, enormous social projects that require enormous amounts of organization, and that there's no such thing as a secret genocide. There's no such thing as a genocide done on the down low, right? So if your claim to me is that what's called the Holodomor was an actual genocide, well, then where's Stalin's speeches? Where's the planning documents? Putin opened up the Soviet archive. Where is it? Where's the evidence? Should be easy to show. Should be really, really easy to prove. Really, really, really easy. But if you're just going to come in here and say dumb shit about subjects that you obviously don't know anything about, then I don't know why I should take you seriously. Especially about my own emotional practices and my own spiritual practices. Like, I just don't know why I should listen to a word you have to say. Crucified for my opinions. Can we talk about how the movie Kangaroo Jack is BS? Crucified coming in with the serious subjects. The serious subjects. Stalin's government intentionally targeted Ukrainians. That's why most of the victims were either ethnic Russians or Kazakhs. The victims of the 1932 famine, I mean. Sorry, June. Can you just restate your position a little bit more cleanly? Because again, I'd love to see Stalin's speeches. Like, which I'm sure it should be easy to show, right? Like, Stalin gave speeches, right? The way that Netanyahu gave speeches, right? Like, the way that Hitler gave speeches should be easy, real easy. I'd love to see a direct to an actual piece of evidence. Crucified for my opinion. You know what? I'm going to read this whole comment, dude, because I just think it's such a funny... Like, why? Why did you even say this? Can we talk about the movie how the movie Kangaroo Jack is BS? Dude, the titular kangaroo only shows up once as a hallucination, despite trailers insinuating that there's a talking kangaroo who wears human clothing as a focal point of the plot. Classic capitalism not delivering on its promises. That's what that is, Crucified. That's what that is, Crucified. It's that capitalism promised you something. It said to you, this movie, Kangaroo Jack, is about a talking kangaroo wearing human clothing. You give me $20. For $20, you can sit down in a comfortable theater in the dark and everyone will silently watch a movie about a talking kangaroo wearing human clothing. And did they deliver? Did they deliver? No. No, they did not. They did not deliver. Capitalism never delivers. If Kangaroo Jack had been done under communist Russia, the whole movie would have been about a talking kangaroo. Communism's the superior system. I rest my case. Where's the fucking kangaroo? Oh! These are the issues that really matter today. These are the issues that really matter. Thank you, June. My position is that the famine was not a genocide. Yeah. Like, well, and people don't really talk about the famine. That the famine wasn't located in Ukraine. Like, it happened in Ukraine, but it also happened in the surrounding provinces. And the oddest thing that I always like, the thing that I really like to point out is during World War II, the second largest cohort of volunteers to the Ukrainian military, to the Soviet military, were Ukrainians. So, like, where's the civil war? Where's the civil strife? Where's the governor of Ukraine talking about an intentional famine against his people? Like, it just seems to me like it's such a flimsy thing that's just said. And we're all just supposed to take it seriously when there's literally no evidence to support it whatsoever. And it's like cartoonish at this point. Like the people who are coming in here with this Ukrainian famine stuff are the dumbest people you'll ever talk to. And they seem proud of it. They seem like completely proud of how dumb they are. When they have no evidence, they've got nothing that they can actually put forward. They can't show you Stalin's speeches. They can't show you planning documents. They can't show you a single bureaucrat. They can't even show you the governor of Ukraine talking about it. They can't show you a single intellectual talking about it. They can't show you a political commentator talking about it because it comes from the fucking Nazis. Because it's the Nazis that said this, and it's the Nazis that spread this around. And now it's the CIA that keeps spreading it around. And like literal Nazi groups and literal fascist groups that keep spreading this shit around. And we just fall for it, hook, line, and sinker, because we're too dumb. We're literally trained from the moment of our birth to just be obedient dumbasses, where we get rewarded for saying, yes, sir, thank you, sir. And you just do what you're told. A+. Do what you're told. A+. Wait a minute. Why should I do that? Wait a minute. This project doesn't make any sense. Why should I do that? F. Oh, potential, but doesn't do what he's told. Right? That's the system. That's how it works. Do what you're told. Become the CEO. Don't do what you're told. Get shoved out the door. And so what do we end up with? We end up with the wealthiest, most connected people being a bunch of dumbasses who, when the system of power says, it was a genocide, they all go, it was a genocide. And if somebody stands up and says, can I see even a little evidence for this? Like anything. Like literally, can we get like a quote from Stalin? Can we get any document at all that shows that this was an intentional genocide at all? And meanwhile, the fact that this is being talked about while there's literally a genocide in front of you, being perpetrated by your country right now in front of your eyes, is just the most dim-witted, dumb fuck shit I've seen in my life. Like, get the fuck right out of here with this dumbass shit. Unbelievable. Manipulaciaja. I definitely pronounced that wrong. Because there's like a little line over the A. Just with an apple emoji. As strong a first comment as I've ever seen, my man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my man. As for the shocker poster, you are a person who has emotions. Have you noticed? I hope you have. If you are not experiencing emotions, you should talk to someone about that, because that's very serious. Do you have any way to visualize emotions inside of yourself at all? Do you ever even think about the nature of your emotions or how to maybe deal with them? Because the chakras are a system by which you can do that. I do not have the chakras here to literally say you literally have spiritual energy literally pooling in literal areas of your literal body literally. That's dumb. Not interested. This is a visualization guide to help you deal with your emotions and deal with your emotional self. And that if you actually take it seriously, it can help you and make you realize that you exist in emotional states and make you recognize what those emotional states actually are and how you can actually move out of them or move through them. Have you ever heard of somebody who lost their temper? Have you ever lost your temper? Right? Well, that's you being taken over by your emotions. And if you don't have a way to actually deal with your own emotional self or to visualize emotions within you in a serious way, then you're just going to be a person who's just taken over by your emotions, and your emotional self is just going to take over. And likely your emotional self will take over, and the whole time you'll be like, I'm in control. What a joke. Or you could just keep believing whatever you like, because that's what you're doing in the first place. And you're not smart enough to actually understand that there's actually knowledge to be had outside of the system of indoctrination that has rewarded you for being such a good little boy and doing what you're told. That's what kills me so much, is that now this fucking Nazi propaganda is going to be taught in schools here in Ontario. That literally the Ministry of Education is saying that they're going to teach that Nazi propaganda in our schools here in Ontario. It's brutal. It's just brutal. So we're just going to get more of this. We're just going to get more of these dimwits coming in and just being like, but the famine! Okay. Can I see Stalin's speech? Can I see the planning documents? Oh, is it just lies? Interesting. Well, if they're lying to you about that, what else are they lying to you about? Like, what else are they lying to you about? Like, what else do you think the system of indoctrination is lying to you about? What else do you think they're having you read for a specific reason? Isn't it interesting how 1984 gets brought up every 30 seconds in the discourse? Isn't it interesting how 1984 is this book that we're all supposed to be like, it's like 1984. Oh, it's like 1984. Every single time any author from the National Post or the Globe and Mail writes about China or Russia, they can start the thing with, in George Orwell's prophetic book 1984. Do you think they made us all read that and study it and analyze it specifically so that they could say that about countries they wanted us to go, oh, it's 1984, yeah, it's a serious thing, when in reality it's a book of fiction written by a snitch? Like, you think they had us read Animal Farm over and over again and think about Animal Farm so that we would be like, that was what the Soviet Union was actually like for real. Yeah, not a fictional book about farm animals. Yeah, but when the 1984 moments actually do happen, these people don't care. Yeah, especially when they happen in your own country, right? Like we're literally funding drone armies and we're funding like robot armies to subjugate the population, and everybody's like, that's fine and normal. But in China, if they institute like a social credit system that's pretty close to the credit system that exists here in America, it's 1984. Oh my God, it's 1984 all over again. And then when you ask these people, like, what was the name of the main character in 1984? Like, what was his name? Anybody? Yeah, 1984 is when minorities have power. Like, what happened to the protagonist at the end of that book? Even like it's this book is supposed to like evoke all of this power in our minds, and everybody goes, oh, go, whoa, whoa, about it. But like, I just don't think most of you actually remember what the book's about. Winston Smith. Dude, what a Bra doesn't even know Winston Smith. Dude, what a forgettable name. Winston Smith. Like, intentionally, like, John Smith, you know? Mono Cabbage. Bra doesn't even know Winston Smith. What an idiot. This guy doesn't even know the main character in the seminal book, 1984. Fucking dumbass. You got me, Mono Cabbage. You got me, man. You got me. Like, in my defense, that is an extremely forgettable name. Like, which is probably the point. It's supposed to be this, like, everyman character, right? He's supposed to be sort of this, like, banal, like, nothing. I know that the name of the actor that played him in the movie was named John Hurt. Does that salvage something for me? It's just really interesting to me that we were taught works of fiction written by, like, you know, an intelligence snitch instead of actually studying history. That's what's interesting to me. That instead of actually, like, reading any reading events that occurred, looking at newspapers, articles, documents written by academics of any sort, right? Instead of any of that, we spent all our time reading these dumbass fiction books. And we're told that this is what it was like. This is it. We did it. Like, how about, crazy thought, we actually listen to what historians have to say. And we actually read, like, some history. How about that? How about, like, it wasn't until I went to university that I started to read, like, Russian literature. And Russian literature is really good, right? Like, Anton Chekhov, for example, really good. Like, his plays are really, really good and have a lot to say about human nature and Russian politics, and give you kind of a sense of what's actually going on during the period that Anton Chekhov is actually writing, right? Certainly a better sense than, like, fucking Animal Farm. It's like, why aren't we having kids study, like, Chekhov? Why aren't we actually doing that instead? That if you actually want to do, like, a commentary on Russian society, shouldn't it come from a Russian? Shouldn't you actually listen to what the Russians had to say? What were the Russians going to see in their own theater and in their own arts? Why? Why were they looking at what they were looking at when they were looking at it? Right? No, instead we're going to read Hamlet for the 10th time, and we're going to read what an intelligence snitch has to say in a fictional document. Like, it's just so fucking banal. Like, it's so dumb. Yeah, resist occupiers. The Chinese social credit system, just a trial and only used to enforce business fines. It doesn't affect most people. Yeah, I mean, the social credit system, near as I can tell, is just like, if you break the law, It exists to be able to provide a form of punishment that isn't simply put you in a prison cell, right? So if you commit fraud, well, the social credit system exists there to be like, okay, you committed fraud, so you can't get a loan anymore, right? But if you just omit from the conversation the reality of what it's actually doing, yeah, minus 1,000 FICO credits, yeah. Just... Well, we're heading into the weekend here. We're heading into the weekend. We've got a little bit of good news going on. What with the death of Henry Kissinger. Farewell, Henry Kissinger. May you burn in hell. I'm trying to really end the week and go into the weekend with more hopeful notes. Something for us to grab onto that reminds us that things seem chaotic and hopeless right now, but the truth is that they're not. That our system is chaotic. That we live in a system of chaos that worships chaos. And this system of chaos is intentionally built and intentionally done up. That we intentionally live in an intentional system of chaos. And so we're experiencing the results of that chaos. That we... but reality is not like that. Reality is more straightforward and more predictable than that. More stable than this. That the chaos that seems to exist inside of the system of reality itself is more stable by far than the chaos we inflict upon ourselves. And that this moment is simply temporary. We're just living in a temporary moment where we're temporarily experiencing temporary instability within a system of capital that is designed to be destabilizing and to destabilize us on purpose. And the system of capital cannot survive. It cannot continue this way. That to me is the most hopeful thing about everything that I see and everything I understand about the system of capital. Is that it seems dark at the moment. But you simply cannot build a society on these precepts. You cannot build a society that ignores the reality of existence, that defies the rules of reality, that defies the rules of the universe, that is inherently inhuman, that says we should all worship little pieces of paper and numbers on a screen. The system cannot survive, and it will not survive. That we saw how fragile the system of capital actually was during the COVID period. That governments had to step in and take serious measures in order to prop up the system of capital during a moment, a flickering moment of crises. That as we begin to experience actual crises, as we begin to experience real crises that persist and that last, the system of capital cannot persist and it cannot stay intact. And it will become further isolated from the rest of the world as the rest of the world begins to see how fragile and how dangerous it is to operate and think in this way. That we are seeing the ascendant powers and the rising powers in the world understand that America and the West need to be isolated, and that they need to become surrounded, and they need to be separated from the rest of us for our own protection more than anything. That we can't continue this way. And to me, that gives me a great deal of hope for the future. Because while we are going to experience negative consequences for our foolishness, and the West has acted very foolishly, and there will be serious consequences, there will be negative occurrences, well, the system of reality will continue on. The system of reality that created us, the system of nature that generated us and sustains us, will continue moving forward and will continue to do the thing that it does, which is to generate iterations of itself in order to learn about itself. That's what we are here for. That's what we are actually here for. So that we can communicate and learn on behalf of the universe, so that it can learn about itself. And the only real regret, I think, that humanity should really have is that we did such a piss poor job of it. That instead of creating systems of support to ensure that everybody was taken care of, that everyone was stable, that there wasn't any fear or threat, that everything was calm, everything was completely normal, giving people space to be able to gather and contemplate together and think about and find ways to express the nature of their reality and the nature of being in reality. Instead of that, we've basically created a stupid game where everybody needs to waste their lives scrabbling around for basic survival. And any kind of contemplation or any kind of experimentation outside of the system of capital is individualized and done in an individualized kind of way. So you end up with all these Marvel brain kids because you've got enormous CIA-funded Marvel movies just jamming across the airwaves, and they've got nothing else to think about or talk about, nothing else of value. You create an intellectual vacuum so that frauds like Shapiro and Jordan Peterson can sound reasonable when they're fucking lunatics of the highest order. And so, but none of this can sustain itself. None of this can continue forward. That the cracks have already started to show in the edifice. The system of capital is already revealing itself to be untrustworthy. The perpetual war machine of the death cult is already reaching its boundaries. They're already of a mind that they can't actually confront China. They're already of a mind where they can't they already know that they've extended and reached their limit. And so we'll see a great retraction. We'll see a great pullback from the empire, as empires always do. That the American empire cannot continue, and it will not continue. As the rest of the world begins to advance, American power will recede, and the rest of the world will begin communicating with itself. Brazil will talk to China and India and Russia and Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan, and South America and South Africa will do the same, and Africa will do the same, and China will do the same, and India will do the same, and Russia will do the same, and they'll all begin connecting with each other, and there will be a singular idea that arises from all of them, which is these guys need to be isolated. Like, we can't do business with these guys anymore. And so America will recede. And then it will have to deal with itself. And it doesn't have a long history of being successful at that. And I look at all of this as a pretty major positive for humanity. that the American empire has been nothing but a bleak, dark stain on the history of mankind. And its exclusion from the rest of world history will be of a great benefit to everyone. Fiddleford, good to see you. Subscribe, baby. Good to see you too. December tomorrow and Calgary is dry and brown. I don't know how people think this is normal, and even to say enjoy it. Yep. Oh yeah, I was walking around today in sandals. I gave my dog a walk today. I wasn't even wearing a jacket. Yep. Like the heat is coming. The heat is coming. And and there is going to be a moment. It's definitely coming. There's going to be a moment when even these dimwits who are walking around being like, wow, sure is nice, where even these guys will start to recognize and realize, oh shit, this is actually very serious. This is actually very serious. Where even these guys driving around in their big trucks, bigger than World War II tank trucks, with their fuck Trudeau stickers, will go, oh shit, this is actually real. This is actually serious. There are events that are coming down the pipe that are 100% going to make it so that it's completely undeniable. And so that these people who are driving around in their big trucks, even in their own circles, if they continue to do that, they will be viewed very dimly indeed. And the social pressure will turn the corner. But it is going to take like significant crop failure, a significant wildfire, Oh yeah, Fiddleford. Demand Better, good to see you. Been a while actually, Demand Better. I hope you're doing well out there, my man. Yeah, the Christian cults are going to be the best. I'm actually, I got to tell you, like from what I've been seeing from the Christian cults, I think they're going to be great. I think they're just going to be a hoot. Like the Christians are already lunatics across the board. Like they're already mad, completely detached from reality already. And so as they advance and as they get even crazier, they're just going to be lunatics. Like they're just going to be complete lunatics. My favorite one that I've actually seen is a Christian cult where they wear bullet crowns and pray with AR-47s and things like that. Like these people are nuts. They're literally venerating and worshiping like firearms along with Jesus Christ. Like it's wild. It's absolutely wild, and it's just starting. It's going to get really crazy. And so my advice is to organize as you can with the people who are around you. One of the things that I'm going to start doing is I've got some time off coming up here, which I'm like desperate for. I can really feel it. It's like, boy, howdy, I need a vacation. And I'm going to use that time off to try to organize a regular event. So once a month, local people will be able to come to this place and will actually be able to organize more seriously along the lines of explicit revolution. Like unapologetic revolution. That we're not here to negotiate. That's not the point of what we're doing. That our objective is to take political power and eliminate the capitalist class. That's the goal. Not to negotiate with them, not to put a 0.2% thing on them, but to incarcerate many of them, to put them in jail and leave them there, to take their assets away from them. That's the goal. And my hope is to organize something once a month, probably the first of the month. It's just about finding the space to be able to do it. And I have some ideas, but I need the time to be able to go do it. And to actually get it organized, and to actually make something, and to actually do something. And my advice for everybody is to start organizing more seriously in that manner. To actually put together some kind of organization that is explicitly revolutionary, unapologetically. Because there's no solution in capital. They're making it very clear to us that there is no capitalist solution. That they'll destroy the species before they even negotiate. And then the second thing that I think we all should do, outside of doing that organization, is to just try to enjoy the ride. Like, it's going to be wild. It's going to be really, really wild what's coming down the pipe. It's going to be really, really crazy what we're going to see. Like, the things that are going to occur over the next 40 years are going to make, like, the previous 40 years look like a vacation. It's events are going to occur that are going to make us say to the boomer generation who's still telling us to get jobs. Like, right now we're saying, okay, boomer. We're going to be saying, shut the fuck up, old man. That's what we're going to be saying. And if they keep talking, we're just going to beat them over the head with a stick. That's what's going to happen. That's who we're going to become. Well, it would be nice. It would be nice if people just listened to what I had to say when I say we should just go out into fields, stare at the sky, look at the clouds, spend time on the beach, stop working for these people, stop participating in this system of death, stop consuming, stop polluting. Just stop. The trouble is that there's a small group, about 3,000 people, who are psychopaths, who have decided that their goal is to destroy the human species. And our goal should be to organize against them as swiftly as possible in order to incarcerate them and strip them of their assets. And we should be explicit and unapologetic about it. Well, we've reached the end of this one. Always remember, guys, each and every one of us is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.